What's good, nerds? Happy Tuesday. Bit confusing, I know. I haven't even kicked out my cats yet. They're being annoying as soon as I started. I thought they would be good, and they're yelling at me. We'll see how that goes. We got a lot to talk about. I really should have filmed these videos a few days ago, but I've been in absolute chaos lately. Hey, Miles. Oh, shoulder time. This shirt is thin. Be careful, bud. Hi. He's not allowed in this room, and he knows that, but he snuck in, so he's enjoying himself a lot. Hey, buddy. I love you so much, but I have to do my job. Somebody asked what are Miles' thoughts on Vercel. He's more a Cloudflare guy. And look at the fur. He's gonna ruin my hair before I even start filming videos. Hey, bud. You guys ever wonder why I'm late to things? It's him. Hey, Miles. I need to get to work, okay? Sorry. I love you. We'll hang later, okay? I promise. Oh, he's giving me the side eye. I'll be right back. The anti-cat barrier has been erected. I'm sorry, y'all. I know you want Miles. I get it, but I want to be able to focus. Also, this room is like 10 degrees hotter than the rest of the apartment, so I'm dying, but hopefully that'll get better as we go. Let's figure out the stuff I need to prep. I'm still waiting for the room to get a little less miserable. So what I was thinking of doing is making a demo app to showcase the exploit. 15 point. I'll do 15.2. Should have the problem. Next exploit. literally none of that. Layout. See if this works. Cool. And then I should be able to, let me do one thing quick before I forget. I'm not going to want to do this in Firefox. Who am I kidding? Application clear. Nice. Cool. Clear the thing I wanted to. Let's add that middleware TS file. Yes, middleware. Export default. Aren't supposed to go wherever you just went. Is add with cool. And now if I go here, be an export default, right? Cool. And cool. Admin. Nice. And if I give myself the fake cookie of is admin true. Cool, that works. Gonna make a list of all the key points I want to hit in this one, so I make sure I do. Key points, middleware is named wrong. layout, wrapper, perms is a bigger deal. Company offsite was terrible timing. I've never seen a real site that would have been vulnerable. I think that's the key points. I find okay, that link. I know Guillermo posted a photo from that offsite thing. Let me. Yeah, cool. Let me find the actual link to the CVE quick. This open. Cool. I think I have all the resources I need for that one now. Should we get to it? I have to check one other thing quick. Okay, nothing there. Good. Cool. I think I'm okay with everything I have open. Cool. I think I have everything I need to get this one started. Back over to here. Yeah, developed by Ed. Keep up the great work. Thank you so much, Ed. I really appreciate the support, man. Super, super kind to you. Thank you, man. Yeah, Ed's the best. He's a legend. OG as hell. Let's thank all the subs I missed while I was getting ready, and then we can go straight into it. I'm not going to be live too long today because I'm not even supposed to be live today, but I had a bunch of stuff we have to cover, and I want to make sure we don't fall too far behind. To figure out things like using Next router or React router inside of Next, you got to just deeply understand the technologies, why they exist, and how they work. That's just something you get from years of using them, paying attention to the pull requests and everything else going on in the space. This was one of the things I was looking for, but I have a tweet that links to it. But that will absolutely be mentioned. I also changed my mind. I kind of want to use Excalibur on here instead. Let's see how I feel about it. Always screw that. Cool. I don't have an easy way to set the header, but I'm not even going to demo that part. Actually, I can do it via a curl. I should have this link, yeah. Drop that in here as well. I think I have everything I need to do this one. Shall we get to it? Let me have a sip of my hopefully not too hot tea. Still too hot. Rip. Oh shit, Zemnis. Oh shit. Uh, in 9 minutes you have to go for a meeting. How long's the meeting? I can wait till you're back. One hour? Ooh, then you're free. Okay, we'll do the new models first then. And when you're back, I definitely want to keep this. I've been citing some of your tweets about this for a bit. You're one of the few people I really trust on all of this. So I will hold until you are ready. I somehow, having known Zem for years and being a huge Kingdom Hearts simp, I never put together that the name is kind of a Kingdom Hearts thing. I actually don't disagree with this fully, so. Like, you guys would probably think I would defend against this, but the Vercel's problem with using existing names to describe things that aren't that thing is something I've had a frustration with for a long time, and I will be going hard on that during this video. Like, my biggest issue with this incident has very little to do with the incident itself and a very large amount to do with other things and mistakes Vercel has made up to this point, piling onto each other, resulting in a disaster. So let's do Gemini 2.5 then. Let me grab these, throw them in Zen. That's the prompt. I want that. I want the actual announcement. I'll do that to give it more room. Most used model in T3 chat is Flash 2.0 by far. Probably because it's our free tier default model as well, but also it's what a lot of people default to because it's really fast, really good, and we don't charge a lot of money for it. Oh shit, that's awesome to hear. It's a very good model. Your sister's killing it. Not a number we're ready to share yet, but we have some exciting numbers we're about to hit soon that will probably result in us sharing things. Yeah, URLs get blocked automatically by YouTube. Sorry about that. We are testing T3 Chat a bit on Safari, but not a lot. There are some really deep core things that are like web technologies we're using that, how do I put it? Like, are fundamentally broken, honestly, in Safari. And we need to put a lot of work in to get those in a state where you don't need them, so Safari will work better. But it's yet another one of those things, like when people tell us that we should be using fucking like Tori for our desktop app, it makes me laugh because most of the problems we have with our current tech are because Safari is garbage. Yeah, I was getting really mad about this too, NMG. I'm so happy we have it fixed finally. Let's get started on this. Discord did another UI overhaul. Oh no. Do Excalibur for this and we'll get started. Okay, I think I have everything we need. Let me check one last thing. Okay. I think we're good. Let's do it. Oh shit. No, thank you so much for the raid, man. Really appreciate it. Happy you thought of me on a day that I'm not normally live. You guys want someone cool to watch to get all that wonderful Laravel love in your life, definitely give his stream a watch. He's also live a hell of a lot more often than I am. I don't normally only go live once a week, but recently there's too much going on. I've been live Tuesday and Wednesday now for last week, and probably this coming week I'll be live tomorrow too. So yeah, thank you guys all for coming. We're covering a bunch of breaking news. It's been a chaotic few days. Let me thank all the subs that I was missing when we were getting started just a minute ago. Then we're going to film some videos. So we got Ethan getting us started. Thank you so much for the support, man. 20 months, 27 total. Jesus. We got A&M here with the 5 months of support with Prime. Thank you so much for that. Bunch of people hitting those or their stream streaks. Good to see you all. No worries, gamer girl. No, you didn't miss anything apparently. Well, we got Pistoa here with the 32 months. Jesus Christ, y'all been around forever. PQO here with the tier 1, 5 months in. Noax with the Prime, 5 months. Thank you support for that. We got Jake here with the Prime. Normal user LOL1 with the Prime. QLink P, always good to see you, man. 24 months, 2 years of support. Parker Codes with the Prime, 1 year. You know, those guys have been around forever now. We got Bendev here with the Prime. Parganate here with the 7 months. G Sporto here with the 23 months. Rencad here with the 10 months of support, getting close to that 1 year mark. Doobie Jorn here with the 14 months, 18 total actually. God damn. Neutrino with the tier 1, about to hit that 1 year. Snug Life with the Prime. BM Davis, thank you for stopping by. 18 months straight. And then Maple here with the 24 months, 34 total. Jesus Christ. Yeah, I also like that I'm filming on stream. I was going to go film these all offline and decided I'd rather have you guys here to give feedback and things as I go, especially for the spicier one. And then dip trips with the Prime as well. Awesome. I think we have everything we need. Let's get going on the Gemini 2.5 video. I have to do my offset. Fuck. That would have been bad. It is, I'll go for 3025. Cool. That's my recording offset all set. Gemini 2.5. The offsets for, I start the camera recording later so I don't just have a ton of camera like footage that I don't need, because I start the recording like 30 plus minutes into the stream start, so it makes it easier to sync things after. Let's get started. Fixing my shirt that my cat destroyed. That's as good as that's gonna get. Anyways. God. Seeming more and more like Google is going to be the big winner in this AI world. We covered a lot. It's seeming more and more like Google's going to be the big winner of the AI race. We covered Gemini 2.0 a while back when it dropped, and I've been blown away with the model since. It was so good and so cheap that we actually made it the default model for T3 chat, and I'm so happy we did. The performance has been great, the answers have been great, the speed, all the pieces are there, and they're doing something genuinely awesome. I'm going to showcase some of the cool things I've done with that, but we're not here to talk about... All that said, we're not here to talk about take on that bit. All that said, we're not here to talk about Flash 2.0 because Google just dropped a new model and I'm kind of blown away. Gemini 2.5 Pro is slaughtering all of the benchmarks, the performance for the... Gemini 2.5 Pro, god damn it. Gemini 2.5 Pro just dropped and everything I'm seeing is pretty nuts. From the speed of responses to the performance it's getting to the benchmarks it's clearing to just slaughtering almost everything else on the market right now. There's a lot of really cool stuff going on with this model, and I can't wait to tell you all about it. But someone's got to pay these bills as cheap as they are. But someone's got to pay these bills, so quick word from today's sponsor, then we'll get right to it. Cool. So what's going on with Gemini 2.5? 2.5 is a thinking model designed to tackle increasingly complex problems. Our first 2.5 model, 2.5 Pro Experimental, leads common benchmarks by meaningful margins, and it showcases strong reasoning and code capabilities. There's a lot of cool stuff going on here. It's another one of those models that, upon dropping, immediately leads the LM Arena, which is pretty cool to see. Like if we go here, you see, wow, pretty quick that Gemini drops and is immediately number one here, even beating out GPT 4.5 and DeepSeek and all these other very well known to be great models. I have a feeling it's going to be a lot cheaper too. I will say we don't know the pricing yet, but unlike the previous Pro models, they've actually confirmed that they'll have this up and available for priced tiers very soon, which is huge because historically I've been concerned about adding non-paid models to something like T3 Chat because it means those rate limits are going to be enforced much more aggressively. If I'm not giving you money, you have no incentive to keep the service up that you're providing. But if I am paying you, you're probably going to keep it around. So very excited for them to add that. All of that said, this has not stopped us from adding the newest models to T3 Chat. I did actually hit up our contacts over at Google, and we were able to get Gemini added early, and the rate limits are high enough that I'm relatively confident you won't have problems if you use it with T3 Chat. So if you're a Pro subscriber on T3 Chat, reminder, only $8 a month, you'll have access to all of the latest models as soon as we can reasonably add them. The only model that's like really cool right now that we don't have, in my opinion, is Gemini. In my opinion, the only cool model we don't have right now is Grok, because despite promising the API for like 2 months now, they've still not shipped the Grok 3 API. It's insane. They're just lying over at the XAI team, and I'm so tired of it. Anyways. Google's been spending a lot of time on different techniques to try and make their models better. All the fun things we've talked about a bunch in the past. 2.5 is all of those things coming together. They combined a significantly enhanced base model with improved post-training. Going forward, we're building these thinking capabilities directly into all of our models so they can handle more complex prompts and support even more capable context-aware agents. Up until this point, the thinking feature in previous Google models has been one of those like patched on pieces where they say, hey, think about this, and then after reprompt with the actual answer. Now it's a proper baked in thing in the model that's still able to be applied to other models too. I'm very excited to see what that looks like in terms of the implementation. Enough of the tech side though. These benchmarks are crazy. Crushing OpenAI O3 Mini High on the Humanity last exam. That's a big win there, especially considering this exam was largely built by OpenAI to find a better benchmark for LLMs. Google beating OpenAI on their own benchmark is nuts, especially when you consider how good O3 Mini High is. It's been my favorite model for a while now, and I'm curious to see if that changes now that Gemini has shipped a better thing. It's killer at math, which is really nice to see. I've had iffy performance with some other models with math. As you see here, 4.5 sucks at math. Claude 3.7's okay at it, but yeah, it's particularly funny when I consider how bad some of the math responses were with Gemini Flash in the past, so I'm excited to see better math performance here. Still not the strongest at coding, so for you guys who are here looking for an alternative to Claude for code, thinking models still aren't quite at the point where they're a great experience in our editors. I've tried multiple times now with using Cursor and all these thinking models. It just doesn't feel as good as getting a response immediately does. I expect this will be cracked in the future, especially with the like parallel multiple agents thing, but for now, not the best experience, and it looks like the results aren't great either. The other problem I've seen with thinking models for code stuff is they'll start to gaslight themselves with that thinking context and do things that they're not supposed to. I've seen thinking models if we go to like the ball prompt, I've seen thinking models convince themselves that gravity is supposed to go the other way and send the ball up instead of down because they are providing themselves with so much reasoning and they're spending so much I think the problem is just that more context is created by the model, which means less context comes from you, which means there's more room for error to occur because there's more space that hallucinations are occurring within. I do want to quickly show my results on this test, though. We open up my cursor here. So you see I have a bunch of different models generating different versions of that test. If I run the Gemini, and here I'm going to run the Gemini version, and you'll see it does pretty well until it doesn't. I was so sad because it seemed like it was going to work great, and then it just, yeah, does great until it hits a corner at the right angle, and then it just falls out. Yeah. And for reference, I have another video coming very soon. DeepSeek just put out an updated version of their V3 model. And it had one of the best answers I've seen to this prompt yet. It just like works. It's not like super well animated, and you can see it has the issue where it rolls and is about to fall out of the container, but it gets bounced back. So it's working much better. But others have been doing the same prompts in more elaborate versions against all the different models. And Flavio here is the creator of this ball in the hexagon concept. I know it's a silly thing, but I do actually quite like it as a gut feel benchmark for how well can this thing code or not. It's obviously not an end all be all. It's not representative of the experience you'll have using it in your editor, but it's a fun benchmark I think we can learn a lot from. And as you guys just saw, the Gemini version still has balls falling out of the hexagon. Good overall, though. But as a general model, this is really good, especially when you consider all the functionality that Google includes. Google models tend to have a handful of things that are really, really nice. They have their grounding feature. Grounding is just their code word for search. It has image parsing, which is super, super handy. They recently added image editing, which is super cool. They also have, one of the most underrated features, though, is that 1 million token input context window. This is nuts. The fact that you can hand 1 million input tokens to something is still unbelievable. When you consider that each token is like 4 to 6 characters, that's a ton. The biggest other reasonable models tend to support is 100,000 to 200,000. 1 million means you can do things you otherwise wouldn't be able to. Something I recently did, and this is a real example, so I'm going to walk you guys through it with me because I was blown away when this worked. This is the Build Different blog. It's a music blog that I really like. I'm going to not inspect. I'm going to view page source. This blog has, this blog gets updated not often enough. It's a crappy Blogspot website that embeds all of the YouTube and SoundCloud embed things directly into the site. And it is rough to navigate and it's barely usable at all on mobile. I wanted to turn this into a playlist. So what I did is what any normal engineer would do. I grabbed the source, I went here, I talked to Gemini Flash, and I said, I'm going to give you some HTML with a bunch of JS, or I should say a bunch of iframe embeds for YouTube and SoundCloud links. I want you to write a JS script I can paste into the console to get all of those links. So given it the instructions, now I'm pasting this insane amount of HTML. I'm not going to code block wrap it because it'll break our parsing a ton, because this is massive, massive. Like, unpleasantly so. It's going to break my sync. It's so massive. I just did this as a test because I was hoping it would be able to see the formatting from there. Here it gives us the JS we can run. But what it did for me before that I was blown away with, I'll just show you because it didn't do it this time. What is the expected output? And here it correctly extracted all of the links. It just did this unprompted the first time, and I didn't believe it. So I took this script and I went and ran it and confirmed it did it correctly. Here is the actual chat history I had where I first did this. As you see, the HTML isn't there because it broke in sync. But when I scroll here, it gave me the output code that I can run in my terminal or in my console. and then correctly got all of the links out of that giant pile of HTML. I was blown away. That's something that I just didn't expect models to do right, and that's why I instinctively ask it to give me the code to do it instead, because I don't expect it to correctly generate something that's that complex. But it's pretty nuts that it can figure that type of thing out, and it's been mind-blowing for me as a resource. I've been using Flash as my default model for a while now. But should we try this taking advantage of the new model? I am curious to see how well the new thinking model does here. 2.5 Pro. Paste. Grab the HTML again. Hopefully not getting rate limited. Cool. Oh, it already wrote the code without even having the HTML. Here's the HTML. What should... Show me what the output should be. Remember, this is an absolutely disgusting amount of information that I'm passing it. Let me tokenizer it quick while that is running. $71,000 tokens, 222,000 characters. So theoretically, that, even at its insane size, would fit in other context windows. Maybe. And look at that, correct answer still. So helpful. I've been blown away at how useful this is as a tool that I've been using pretty much. Oh, that's not even the right thing. Never mind. Cut that. Still generating. Certainly taking his time thinking on this. According to chat, it's also good at image extraction. Thank you, Christian, for the context there. That doesn't surprise me. That does remind me, though, there are other features that Google does that make it an easier default every time I reach for it. They have native PDF support, and the things you can do with this are nuts. It's able to go through just absurd amounts of pages, and it can parse images, graphs, and charts from the PDFs, too. Most other image parsers built into APIs for these AI models doesn't have that level of capability. Okay, cool. We got our answer here. Found 61 iframes, checking sources, and here it correctly spits out all of them. 61 iframes total, 60 of them have source attributes containing either YouTube or SoundCloud. Awesome. I'm pumped. I will be using this a lot. They also claim that they've been focused on advanced coding stuff, even if they're not quite as good as some of the other models. The progress appears to be nuts. I've had 50-50 luck with Gemini, especially the Flash version with code stuff. So this seems to be a really promising win. Apparently the custom agent setup helps it a lot too. Did they do a vibe coding game example? Really? We got to watch this. Oh, no audio. Nice. That is not bad for a one-shot at all. It's funny how much they've been bragging about what they call their zero-shot generations, where it figures it all out with very little effort, and it seems like it's doing good at it. Another fun thing, they claim that a 2 million window, or one other fun thing that I'm actually quite excited about, there's a 2 million context window coming soon, which is just insane. That's going to handle most code bases fine. Like, I've been seeing what a code base of ours flattened into tokens looks like, and some of them are even under 100,000 tokens, but most would be under 2 million. That's really cool. Imagine if the whole model can contain, or Just imagine the model having context on your entire code base without all these other tools like RAG and lookups. Very, very impressive stuff. So why is Google so far ahead? Why are they able to make these models this good, this fast, and this cheap? There's a handful of things that determine how well models can work and run. I want to break these down to help emphasize why Google is so well positioned. In order to make a model perform well and run great, you need a couple key things. You need a ton of data. I'll just say data. You need data. Let me hide that. Cool. You need data. You need hardware. And of course, you need science. These are the three pieces that determine how well an AI model can possibly perform. Data is the actual stuff that the models are using for training. It's the things they scrape from the internet, the code bases they bought the rights to in order to train on, all of the different things that, all the different sources of data and the quality of that data, the filtering you do on that data, the categorization, and all of that is essential to the success of any given AI model. It's basically impossible for an AI model to be smarter than the data you give it, so you need a lot of it. You might see where this is going. Next is the science, the actual people who know the techniques and technologies to make all of this possible. The science behind LLMs is both pretty simple and rudimentary and incredibly complex and hard to understand. It's a whole field that has been studied for decades now, and Google's historically been a leader in that field. You could make the argument that Google Translate was one of the first real examples of an LLM trying to create paths of what word is most likely to be next based on previous inputs. Google has a deep history of doing this type of science and machine learning stuff, which benefits them greatly. And then we have hardware. Historically, we've just relied on NVIDIA's GPUs for all of this because they're a relatively strong. Historically, we've relied on NVIDIA GPUs and CUDA for all of the training, generation, and eventually inference when you're building these models because we do that largely because these GPUs are good. They have a ton of chips on them that can go relatively fast. The sheer number of compute units that exists on a high-end GPU makes it possible to do large transforms against insane amounts of data. But NVIDIA is not the best it can get. There's a company you guys might have heard me shill a few times on here, Grok. They're one of a handful of these types of companies that are trying to build better chips for inference. The task of parsing through an insane map of words to figure out what word is most likely to be next is a challenge. And it's a challenge that GPUs are surprisingly good at, especially compared to CPUs. But theoretically, we could have chips that do it better. If you were around for the chaos of Web3 and crypto mining stuff, you might have remembered the ASIC revolution. Initially, when you were mining cryptocurrencies, you would use GPUs. And all mining was taking this complex math problem to break a block to verify the next set of transactions. And a bunch of people would run against it, hoping they'd be the one to crack the code for that block and get the payout of a bunch of Bitcoin. That was done on GPUs because they handle the type of math well. But eventually, when crypto got valuable enough, a handful of companies started to build specific cards and specific chips just for doing that type of math better. If you know the exact format of a given mathematical problem, you can architect your GPU. If you know the exact format of a math problem, you can architect your chip around it to perform better. And that's what companies like Grok are doing. The reason Grok's inference is hilariously fast is because they built the chip just for doing these. The reason Grok's inference is so hilariously fast is they're using chips that were built specifically for it. And to be clear, Grok with a Q is not the same as the XAI Grok with a K. Entirely different. Grok with a Q does chips and hosting for models that they didn't make. We actually use them for a bunch of stuff in T3 chat. So if you want to see just how fast it can go, let's hop over to the DeepSeek R1 Llama distilled model. Solve Advent of Code 2021 Day 5 in Python. Do you see how fast this is going? I can barely scroll to keep up with how fast the thinking is going. And if I close it, you'll see as soon as the answer is done just how fast it can go. Yeah. It's pretty stupid fast. You can't even keep up with how fast it goes. This is because their chips are really, really good at this type of thing. They're not as flexible, though, because the chips have built these expectations. There's a lot of models it will not be able to run, but then there's a lot of models it can. While it can't run standard DeepSeek R1, it can run the Llama distilled version because it was built to work with models similar to Llama and Qwen. So it handles Qwen and Llama pretty well. It doesn't handle R1 by itself well, but R1 distilled on Qwen or Llama, it can do great. So why am I talking about this other random company? The reason is that Google is also building their own chips. Google is the only big AI company that's doing its own hardware as well. OpenAI isn't, and they don't have the right people or history to do it. Obviously, Anthropic isn't either. There's a couple other companies like Grok that are doing hardware really well. And I should just put some of the examples. We have Grok, Cerebras, Samba Nova, I believe, is one. These are all companies that are focused entirely on the hardware. When we go to the data, we have companies focused just on that, like Data Curve, Scale AI, and there's a bunch of others that do nothing but data collection in order to make it easier for these companies that are training their data and training their models to get the stuff that they need. And then the science. This is obviously companies like OpenAI, DeepSeek, Anthropic. Historically, companies in the space focus all in on one of these parts and use that as their lever. OpenAI, DeepSeek, and Anthropic are making groundbreaking models because they're all in on the science. Data Curve and Scale AI are collecting data that all of these companies need, and they're all forming contracts with them to get the data they need for their training. And on the hardware side, Grok, Cerebras, and Samba Nova are all just super focused on making the best possible hardware in order to run these models. Hopefully you see where we're going. There's one other company that we can put at the bottom of all of these. Hopefully you see where we're going. There's one other company that needs to be put at the bottom of all of these. Google is the only company to meaningfully do two of these, much less all three, which positions them incredibly well because they have an infinite set of data from decades of running the internet. They have some of the best scientists in the world building incredible tech, and the scientists can work alongside the hardware guys in order to make sure the model is built to run as well as possible on the custom hardware that they're making. And this super tight relationship between the science side and the hardware side is something that no one else has, especially when they also have the data on the other end that they can use to train the model in the first place. The only thing I've seen close to this level of like synergy and cohesion is Apple. And they're obviously not figuring out the AI space as we've seen with Apple Intelligence. But Apple is one of those few companies that has the hardware and the software together locked in, where they know what devices are going to run their software so they can make assumptions that somebody like Microsoft can't. Google is doing the same thing here. Since Google's not releasing their models as open source for others to run on NVIDIA GPUs, they can assume that their models are always going to run on their custom Google chips. That assumption lets them do a ton of stuff that no one else can reasonably do. Every other company has to partner with one of these guys. I should also put in NVIDIA here. So everyone else has to partner with one of those chip manufacturers. Google doesn't. The science groups have to buy data from other places. Google doesn't. These data companies that spend all their time trying to find people to sell their data to, Google doesn't. Google is incredibly well positioned here in a way that almost no one else, or Google's incredibly well positioned here in a way that no one else in the industry really comes close to. And I expect this to continue to result in crazy wins on Google's side, be it the incredible performance of the models, the speeds that you get, the price, which, mind you, is still just insane. Go over to my model prices. You know what? People keep asking for this, so I'm going to make it public. Now my GIFs with pricing is publicly accessible. I'll add a description. Rough list of popular AI models and the cost to use them. Cost is per 1 million tokens. Cool. I'm here because if we look at the pricing here, Gemini Flash Lite is hilariously cheap. Mistral 3.1 Small is really cheap for what it is. And then Gemini Flash, which, mind you, is often a model comparing in performance to GPT-4o, is 10 cents per million in and 40 cents per million out versus 4o, 25x more expensive on the input, and disgustingly more expensive on the output. It's 25x on both, yeah. If we compare Flash to a model that's similar in performance, like 4o here, it's 25x less expensive for both input and output tokens. That is insane. That's unbelievable. That said, we haven't seen the pricing for the Pro models yet because 2.0 has... That said, we still haven't seen the pricing for the Pro models because the 2 Pro version for 2.0, not 2.5, is still experimental, and Google doesn't charge for experimental models. So we don't know what the Pro versions are going to look like in terms of price yet, but considering the orders of magnitude gap between Gemini and other models of similar quality, I would expect that gap to continue. I would expect Google to lead in price, despite the fact that they're also now leading in performance. There is one other piece here that is worth considering. I'll put it down here. Money. Basically, every company in here, other than NVIDIA, DeepSeek, OpenAI, basically every company in here, other than NVIDIA, Anthropic, OpenAI, and obviously now Google, has to put a lot of work in order to have enough money to fund these explorations. That's concerning because money, especially nowadays, is not as easy to get as it used to be. Mind you, Grok just had a pretty crazy deal where they landed, let me scroll back here. They got a crazy commitment for $1.5 billion of spend. That's not money they get immediately. That's money that they're going to get over time from a customer who's using their chips to roll out a ton of stuff. But that's still nothing compared to the money Google can just piss around into stuff. That also means Google could theoretically run at a loss. We don't know if they are because we don't know how much the hardware they're running on costs. We don't know much about the hardware other than that it exists and that it seems to be pretty good because it's theirs. They're not selling it. And that's the biggest difference probably between Google and all the other companies is since they want to win, they can, instead of selling any one of these things, they will instead bundle the whole thing up and sell this to you as an API. OpenAI has their own infrastructure that they built in partnership with, or OpenAI has their own infrastructure they built in partnership with Azure, but you can host OpenAI models on Azure yourself. DeepSeek has an API that's almost always down, so you're expected to host those models yourself. Anthropic has an API that's insanely expensive and absurd in its uptimes, especially recently with the demand. But you can but you can host their models in other cloud providers like GCP and AWS. Google will never let you use their models in another cloud because Google has their own GCP. That's almost another category I could put in here, like the platform. Because Google has an actual cloud platform similar to AWS or Azure with Google Cloud Platform. And as much as I've memed on it in the past, hell, I've memed on it today because it got in my way a whole bunch. It's there and it works. It's a mess, but despite being a mess, it can kind of get out of it because they're so strong in these areas. And it's mind-blowing to me. I've been crapping on Google Cloud for the better part of a decade at this point. But I'm still using it more than ever, and I'm still in that dashboard more than most of the others now because Google won so hard on these categories. How is this going, chat? Do you guys feel like I'm reaching here, or is this fair? Everyone's saying fair? Cool. Can I say something that makes me angry? Where the fuck is Apple in all of this? All I want is for Siri to answer one basic question. Yeah, Apple is kind of screwed because they were not prepared in any of these categories. Apple has no data because they are such a private company and privacy's always been their focus. So the data they need to train a model themselves doesn't exist. The science side, they have historically under-invested in and under-hired in because they don't have the data, so they don't have things like recommendation systems that are good. So they've not done that. Even Siri itself wasn't a thing they built. It's a thing they acquired because they didn't have the talent internally to do it. In their hardware side, despite having incredible stuff, Apple's hardware is entirely focused on how much performance can we squeeze per watt, which does great things for phones and tablets and tiny little laptops like the one I'm doing all this on right here, but it doesn't do anything for this type of inference. And we've seen how hard it is for Apple to release desktop computers that are powerful. They just strap more of the same chip on and hope for the best. Apple's hardware division is innovating like crazy for the devices we have in our phones. Apple's hardware division is innovating like crazy for the devices we have in our pockets, but they aren't doing much of anything for everyone else. So if you need something like, if you need at-home inference, you can strap a bunch of Mac Minis together. It's better than you would expect, but it's still nothing compared to what Grok or Cerebras or NVIDIA and Google are doing. It's just not what they are investing in. So I agree, Apple's position in this market is bad, and the result of their lack of planning is embarrassing. Apple's hardware is good enough that it should be able to run a lot of these things locally, and we've seen that with companies like Ollama. Ollama makes it hilariously simple to just install a tiny little program and run models locally on your computer. And Apple's hardware is capable of doing it at pretty reasonable speeds, but Apple hasn't figured this all out themselves yet. One last thing I want to emphasize with Google. Historically, Google Cloud wasn't what I would call, how do I put this? Tuned in. GCP always felt like it was not really understanding the state of the world. Like we would be out building cool serverless stuff with Next, and they would say, hey, you should try Google Cloud Run. And I would try it, and 20 broken input boxes later and a fundamentally dysfunctional GitHub integration, and I had a broken deployment out. It was embarrassing. That is not the experience I have had with the AI side. Logan, if you guys don't know, Logan has been out and about constantly doing Twitter spaces, being the main point for announcing all of these new things when they happen, answering people's questions, DMing people who are trying to get this all working, really making the AI product function. And AI Studio is so much better than the rest of Google Cloud. It's kind of hilarious when you have to hop out of AI Studio into other Google Cloud product stuff. Like you want to see how hard your service is getting hit through GCP. You can't see usage data in AI Studio yet. So you have to go into Google Cloud, and then you realize just how hard they have to fight to get out of all these things. I bring this up because the comms around this release have been awesome. This is from Oriol, who is an official member and VP of Research and Deep Learning at Google. His post about this used the Hexagon demo. I think that's awesome. I genuinely like the fact that they're tuned in enough that they see what's going on in this world. They're hanging out with us in Twitter and all these other spaces, watching my videos, hitting me up, taking part in the space as a whole, and showing it actually generate stuff based on what we are talking about. That's cool. This is a level of awareness that I'm not used to from Google. I have not seen them get it like this before. And it's nice to see a Google that's paying attention to what people are actually doing in the space and what we're actually using this tech for. So once again, 2.5 Pro, incredible model. Google's been working really hard. They're incredibly well positioned, and I would not want to be their competition right now. I say, despite the fact that T3 Chat is almost inarguably kind of their competition. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. Do you like the model? Are you going to try it? If not, so what do you guys think? Do you like the model? Do you hate it? Do you think I'm crazy thinking Google's well positioned here? Or do you think they're probably going to win? Let me know in the comments. And until next time, please sub to T3 Chat. We got to pay these bills somehow, man. Cool. Good stuff. You know what? I'll sneak one more in here. Cool. Phase, sneak this clip in way earlier when I'm first showing it in T3 chat and mentioning that's only $8 a month. If you haven't subscribed to T3 chat, I'm going to make it a little bit easier. There's a coupon code on the screen right now to give you half off for your first 3 months. Not 3 months, we'll do first month. Yeah, cool. If you haven't subscribed to T3 chat, we'll make it a bit easier. Here's a coupon code to get you if you haven't subscribed to T3 chat yet, we'll make it a little easier. Here's a coupon code that gets you half off for your first month. So that's only $4 for 1,500 messages across all of these models. Pretty insane deal if you ask me. Make sure you redeem it quick though, because it's only going to be available for the first 200 people who redeem it. Cool. Sorry, live folks, I can't set it up because I have to go to Stripe, so I can't give you guys the code early. Phase will figure out what the code is later. Make sure you ask me before you finalize the edit. Cool. Oh shit. Hey John, good to see you, man. Thanks for stopping by. Hopefully I did a good job with that one. I think I covered it pretty well. The big point, I don't know if you were here for when I emphasized it. This guy, Google has an insane position in the market here. I wanted to really make sure this was driven home. Interesting. Just fed some writing you did into 2.5, and it, without me specifically asking, noted the author implies X, which you did. Kind of nuts. How to watch ads? Oh, yeah, sorry about that. There's absolutely plans for a T3 Chat desktop app. He got turbo so he wouldn't get ads anymore. Good stuff. Let me put notes in Notion here. Editor notes. There's a coupon code upsell after the ending. Stuff it wherever I first plug T3 chat. Cool. Dope. And this one, once Notion's automations apply, I would love to get out by end of day today. These two can both be tomorrow. I'm going to set these now so I don't forget to. MCP and T3 chat's going to be a bit. I have feelings. Folder upload is a scary thing. DM me context on what you mean by that, and I'll think about it. Chat groups will absolutely be a thing. Let me thank all the subs that I missed while we were doing that. I think I got you dip trips regardless. Thanks for the prime. We got Scion here with the prime. Flavio, always good to see you, man. Thanks for the prime. Nick serves 16 months of prime now. Shivam here with the 9 months straight. XYZ Eva, always good to see you. 1 year now. Jesus Christ, it's been forever. And yo, Doc throwing JP the sub too. Thank you so much for gifting the subs where they need to be. Code folder. It would just destroy our context. Or our... Oh, that's another thing I want for the pricing bit. More for Gemini vid. Yeah, Phase, stuff this in whenever I'm talking about the pricing. Gemini is so popular in T3 chat that over 1 million messages have been sent to it, which is unbelievable. And if you're curious about cost, that was about $1,200 for 1 million messages. Claude has gotten less than half as many messages, and it's cost us $31,000. Is 3.5 and 3.7 from Claude a better model than 2.0 Flash? Yeah. But is it 60 plus times better? No. Gemini is a foundational unlock for companies like me. And Gemini fundamentally unlocks things that weren't viable for other companies in the space. Gemini unlocks some crazy stuff that wasn't possible, both due to the crazy context window size as well as the price. It's insane what you can get away with using Gemini 2.0. And I'm excited for a future where AI bills are chasing these prices. Cool. Extra bit about how much it costs in T3 chat. Sneak it around where I show the pricing guest. Cool. Unlikely we'll do artifacts in T3 chat anytime soon. It's on the list of things we're considering, but it's just not a super high priority at the moment. Yeah, I'm so excited to see what the actual cost for 2.5 comes out to. I have a feeling it'll be a lot cheaper than everything else still, but I can't know until the price drops. So fingers crossed there. Now it is time for yet another new model video. Hopefully I got their handle right. Did. Did I marker the end of the extra? I've done that in here if I did. I did not marker end extra for Gemini. Cool. The problem with V3 is that it's also way slower than 2.0 Flash. Jesus Christ. More extra for Gem and IVID. Okay, phase, sneak this into when I'm talking about the chip part in that diagram, where I'm talking about the hardware side and like what they get from having the dedicated hardware. Yeah. To emphasize how big the win of your own hardware can be, look at how much faster Gemini is than all of these other models. It's absurd. Gemini Flash is so fast that it almost felt irresponsible to not use it as our default model because it's so much faster than anything else that's a traditional cheap model. The only companies that get close are ones like Grok running these older models really quickly on their dedicated hardware. Having groundbreaking models with groundbreaking speeds is kind of a Google exclusive thing right now. And when you look at this intelligence versus speed graph here, the only thing in the green section is 2.0 Flash, because everything else is significantly slower or significantly dumber. That's insane if your goal is to do something like what we are with really fast performance in a really nice web app combined with intelligent thinking. It's a good model. I like Flash for a reason. It's been very impressive for us. And the new thinking models that they're dropping aren't going to... There's a reason I shill 2.0 Flash so hard. It's a very, very good model that's performed wonderfully for us. Shout out to Artificial Analysis for all these awesome charts and data, by the way. These guys make my life much easier as I try to highlight these things. I should show cost too quick, though, because it's really funny how much O1 breaks this chart. It basically isn't a good chart until you turn off O1 because of how far off to the side it is. Gemini Flash here is as far left as Nova Micro and Llama 3.1. If you've never heard of Nova Micro, there's a reason. It's a bad model. But it's even cheaper than 4.0 Mini, despite being quite a bit smarter. I'm excited for these charts to get updated to include the new Gemini model, but even here you can see the insanity of the intelligence to price. And when you combine that with the speed chart, it's like, why would you ever default to anything else? I'm at the point where we're probably going to change how Gemini is tracked in T3 chat, so it's not part of your 1,500 message limit, because it's so cheap and so fast that I don't want people to ever worry about hitting a limit with it. Interesting. I'll save this to look at later. I don't want to do... I really don't want T3 chat to be an alternative to Cursor. Temporary chats will absolutely be a thing. We will not offer a free version of DeepSeek because it's... I don't want to offer slow models for free because they cost enough money on the infra side. I don't think Cursor's losing money. There's enough people paying the $20 a month that are barely using it, and they have good enough deals with Anthropic for the Claude usage that I'm sure they're not losing too much money. On the topic of temp chats, does anybody have a service that does temp chats really well that I can use as a reference as we set it up and like figure out the UX for it? Eva, they absolutely could do that, but because they raise a ton of money too. But I know that Cursor's finances are in a really good state overall. I would not worry about Cursor losing money. Windsurf, however. Oh, you want us to do it so you had good UX with it because no one else has it. That's hilarious. I did see GPT image gen. Is GPT image gen stuff good enough that it's worth doing a video on it? A JavaScript programmer with blonde hair and a really nice dark mustache. Very interesting to like blur or like deblur from top to bottom like that. My understanding of diffusion is not this. This is very interesting. The random change in the color was strange there. It is a very realistic looking photo. I'll give it that. It is spooky how good these have gotten at that. But if I go to like Midjourney, which I'll have to sign into. Okay, send that. Cool. And authorize. Ah. Significantly faster and similar quality. Looks a little less real. It's significantly better than Dolly was, though. Like, Dolly was so bad. Not Sora, Dolly. Yeah, it was so bad. I'm confused what all of this, like the awkward walking in and sitting thing is so strange. The text stuff is pretty nuts too. Maybe I do have to cover this. God damn it. Midjourney is not in T3 because they don't expose an API for it. Cursor is good for this, absolutely. There's an ask mode where it will just answer questions about the code base. I don't want chat apps to be used for code-based traversal. They're very different problems. I draw a pretty clear line there where if you need code-specific stuff that is code-base specific, you should use a tool like an IDE for that. I don't want to make it like we had a lot of users who were having problems because they used some crappy tool to like take their code base and XMLify it so they could have all of their files pasted into a chat input to use with a normal AI chat app. I hate it so much. So much. Just use Windsurf or Cursor or Copilot or fucking Augment. I've been using that a lot more for big code bases. It's been nice. Literally anything else. I'm saying this as somebody who doesn't want to compete with Cursor because it's a different product. Yes, I'm an investor in Cursor. I'm also an investor in Microsoft. I'm also an investor in T3 Chat. And I'm saying I don't want T3 Chat to compete with that other industry category. My investment status has nothing to do with this. If I wasn't invested in Cursor, I still wouldn't want to compete with them. That's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool demo. Cursor is absolutely not a monopoly. It's just a highly competitive space. Well, of course, it's good at anime. Okay, I think I have to talk about this. God damn it. I did another extra bit. Last extra speed. Sneak it in where I talk about hardware and the advantage it gives Google. Cool. I guess you need to OpenAI can do images well. Back in like 5. No, rush them. We have other things to film. Your company, funny enough, is making it so I have to do more other things. What does Sama have for me? This is a very good tweet. Thank you. Thank you, Joel. That was great. As I was saying, your company just dropped more things I have to cover, so you have more time as I cover the image gen stuff. Cool. Let's go straight in. I have a rough idea of how I want to start this one. Yeah. I hope we all agree that OpenAI is a groundbreaking AI company, and I don't think we should have to... OpenAI is a company known for breaking new ground in the AI space, at least in the LLM space. Their ability to generate models that generate text is pretty much unmatched to this day. It's cool seeing more companies start to catch up, but OpenAI has always been really far ahead because they invented the large language model as we know it today. That said, there are other types of AI generation that aren't LLMs, that said, there are other types of generation that AI can do that aren't necessarily the strongest suit for OpenAI, in particular, diffusion. For a long time, image generation through diffusion, for roughly 4 years, how many years have it been? For like 3 or 4 years now, image gen has been kind of a weak spot for OpenAI, and smaller companies like Midjourney that are fully self-funded and just doing a Discord bot have run circles around OpenAI stuff. That is, until today, because not only has OpenAI leapfrogged and made image generation significantly better than it used to be, they also appear to have figured out text. This is super cool. I'm really excited to dive into all of the things OpenAI just shipped and the benefits we can see, not just in ChatGPT and 4.0, but also apparently in Sora. So this is going to be very, very interesting. That said, generating media is not a cheap use of AI, and someone has to pay these bills. So we're going to hear a quick word from today's sponsor and then get right to it. Every take on the cut there. That said, as a $200 a month pro user of OpenAI, this bill needs to be paid. So a quick word from today's sponsor, then we're going to dive right in. Cool. So 4.0 image generation has arrived. A quick history lesson here. How do I want to start this? I'll just news chat. Quick history lesson. Previously, if you wanted to do image gen in ChatGPT, you would use DALL-E, which was their image generation model. And the quality of the things you can get from it were not great, to say the least. I asked it to generate me a JavaScript programmer with blonde hair and a really nice dark mustache. And here's where we got. It's not like the worst, but the text on the wrong side of the screen, the weirdness in the background here, the blurry, kind of like, I don't know how to call it. It's almost like, why is it a worse version of everyone's favorite font? You know, I don't want Comic Sans in my AI gen. It's just, the more you look, the worse it gets. And if we compare that to Midjourney, which, remember, guys, Midjourney is a company that isn't privately... And remember, guys, Midjourney hasn't raised a whole bunch of money and spent billions of dollars on training. They're a small team that has managed to make models that are significantly better than what OpenAI has shipped, at least until now. That'll be a funny thing to bring up in a bit. So what's the performance like with this new model? Let's try it. 4.0, hit the create image button. JavaScript programmer with blonde hair and a nice dark mustache. Let's see how it does. First thing you'll notice is it is not particularly fast. Here we see still going. It's going to take a bit. We'll do our best to not edit so you get the real-time speed here. Start at 1:32:15 or so. Another interesting thing you'll see here is it's generating top to bottom. If you understand how diffusion models work, this is probably confusing to you as it is to me. I'll do a quick demo of how they work in a moment. But we can already see the results here are significantly better. It just changed the color halfway or so through the generation. I've noticed doing that consistently. Oh no, don't put the code on the wrong side of the laptop again. Oh, the laptop is backwards. Better, improved, significantly improved. Mustache looks pretty solid, nice curl going on it. The skin textures are insane. To get skin that realistic with an AI model is nuts. This is solid overall. The text on the laptop isn't great. Change the laptop's text to show a demo of the Fibonacci sequence in JS. Because apparently it can do text changes really well. And just to show the first one that we did before, did a great job. It even has like the right JS logo on the shirt with the font and everything proper. It does text way better than things I've tried in the past. Oh no, did I lose my thread that I was just in? Because I'm in a different tab? Yeah, that's silly. It's possible that the refresh there just killed this in progress. I would give them crap for it, but our UI handles refreshes mid-generation really badly too. Something that we're all doing wrong because resumable streams is a very hard problem to solve. I'm just gonna resend that. I have one of my friends at OpenAI here. They should be better quality because it's the same model as the rest of the text. Yep. It really is just using 4.0. That's super cool and fascinating. I am curious if it's using 4.0, how is it? Is this diffusion still? Like, how did they make this? Because this feels like it couldn't be diffusion in the traditional sense if it's 4.0. While this generates, I want to give a quick summary of the difference between these things. WTF is diffusion. So the way that LLMs work, to show you the basic original example, it's easiest to think of an LLM almost like really good autocomplete. Like if I type sup blank, if you know me well enough, you know the thing that's most likely to follow here is nerd. If I regularly ask my partner, what do you want for dinner? Based on previous chat histories, previous things I have done on my phone, it's smart enough to use that context to guess what word is most likely. It might have different options, like it might have breakfast, lunch, dinner, laundry. I don't know. But it has these different options, and it has to decide based on the context we have here, what is most likely to be next between these different options. And that's why when you generate text using traditional LLMs, it comes in token by token. It is effectively breaking this up into chunks it can understand and using crazy math to figure out what chunk is most likely to be next. This is how standard LLMs and generative text work. This is not how diffusion works at all. So get this out of your mind. Diffusion's an entirely different thing. I'm going to show how it works a weird way. There was actually recently a new text model called Mercury Coder, which is a diffusion language model. And you'll see on the left here, we have a traditional LLM where it's generating token by token each piece as it goes. The way that diffusion works is it has a bunch of noise and it tries to correct the noise. If you're familiar with traditional image processing like sharpening, if I have an image that has, I don't know, let's say we have 4 pixels. And these pixels are all different colors. Let's say that we have, I don't know, blue, 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 red. So we have an image that's these 4 pixels, and we tell so we have this image that's 4 pixels, and we tell an AI, upscale it. What it will do is it will take this, it will cut it into the additional pieces, and then based on context clues and other higher res images, and most importantly, images that it has that are lower resolution that it is using as reference by just downscaling and upscaling to generate a ton of data, it could do the rudimentary pass here where you just turn each pixel into its counterpart. So each pixel becomes the 4 of the grid, blue, 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 blue. And then red here gets these 4 corner spots. This is the very rudimentary scaled upscale, because we went from 1 pixel to 4 in each block, and we just put the 4 in each of the spots. But let's say we knew this was part of something. We knew this was an American flag, or we knew this was someone's shirt. We might be smart enough to do something like this, where now it's clear this is a line. And the model was smart enough to recognize that and basically make an upscale that isn't 1-to-1. Because here we have the line drawn, but we don't have enough pixels to represent it in as fine-grained a way. But as we upscale, if we know enough about the image and what it's supposed to be, we can make these types of decisions as we upscale what we have. You could think of a diffusion model as this ramped up a ton, where we're trying to take this thing we know is wrong and do a pass to remove some noise, do a pass to increase the resolution. Diffusion models are going through something we know is slightly wrong and trying to correct it as we go. And it does multiple passes because it's similar to like a noise filter. If you're trying to remove noise from an image, which is something we've been trying to solve for decades now in image processing, you can run the denoiser multiple times and it will remove more noise each time. Generative models or diffusion models are basically doing this. They are making corrections to a thing by passing over it over and over again with an instruction to try and make it look more like it. So when you use a tool like Midjourney or any of these image generation tools, you say, generate me an image of a dog, it will start with a bunch of noise, a bunch of random gray dots, and then each pass will adjust them to look more like a dog. And if you use a tool like Midjourney, image of a golden retriever, you'll see once it starts, you get an image. You couldn't even see how noisy it was because it's so fast now. But if I turn off the fast compute here, we'll do relaxed this time. We'll run it again. We should see some very noisy images. Will it even show me the noise versions? There. It gave us the really noisy early one, a phase if you can go back, pause, and zoom in on one of those so people can see. It starts with much noisier stuff. See if I can find an article that shows a better example of noise. Yeah. So if you start with this, and you tell the model it's a picture of a cat, it can start to figure it out. And each step, each diffusion pass gets closer to what you want. Hopefully, this all makes sense. This is also the reason that this text model that these guys Inception made is so bad, because turning a bunch of noise and random text into functioning code is something we've all had to do if we've had bad enough interns, but is not a pleasant experience. So for different tasks, different types of generation make more sense. And historically, OpenAI has been much stronger on the left to right generation, token by token. And other companies have been able to go ahead of them with diffusion. You can also see why diffusion would be bad at text in general, and why we have the hilarious outputs that we got with the generation here with DALL-E. This text being so awful makes sense if you remember that this started as noise, and the noise has been refined to this point. Cool. Speaking of text, let's go back to the Speaking of text, let's go back to here where I told it to change the text of the code here. Did to change the laptop's text to show a demo of the Fibonacci sequence in JS. Let's see how it did. It didn't highlight it properly, but syntax highlighting is pretty hard. It's sizing things wrong. I don't know why there's a colon here. It tried its hardest. Didn't quite get it right, but it did try. Let's give it something more fun. Do I have any pictures that have text in it that I can give it as a fun demo? Trying to find an image of like one of my badges from a conference or something. Let's give it a meme. Go back to, where did I lose? Oh, it's loading, that's why. It's stuck in that loading state. God. Refresh to make that go away. Give it that image. Change the text to be a meme about OpenAI image gen being better than Midjourney. And to be fair, we can give it to Gemini as well. I want to learn more about the image. Where's the link to it? Is it just in AI Studio? I can do that then. Cool. Grab that. Let's grab the same text. I'm not sure if it'll even work in here. I'll throw it in Gemini as well. Why not? We really need to add image stuff to T3 chat. I've wanted to for a while. It can parse images, but it can't create them. Looks like it's struggling. It added new text there. OpenAI image. It didn't do what I asked it to. It correctly added text. That's better than it used to. It got the corners of the box a bit wrong, but improvements. Oh, I just realized it moved the text off of their faces and brought back their faces from the original meme. That's fascinating, actually. Is that the wrong model in AI Studio? 2 Flash should be the right one for this, right? Oh, Flash image gen. Good call out. Maybe I need to do the same here. I thought I was already on advanced. Am I not? Wait, 1 sec. Hopefully this doesn't break my crazy lifetime discount on my Google subscription. Did that work? Might need to use a... Oh, I know, that worked. Cool. And now, if I refresh, advanced... No? Maybe you have to do it in Studio. Interesting. It did something. OPA BI image gen better than Midjourney. So if you thought these tools would be good for meme generation, maybe for parts of it, but not the core of it. God, I was excited. RIP. It tried. It also yassified the current girlfriend, which is hilarious. OpenAI got like the actual spirit of the original here. It's fascinating. This is actually really, really interesting. Enough of my yapping. I want to hear what they have to say. Read the blog quick. At OpenAI, we have long believed image generation should be a primary capability of our language models. That's why we've built our most advanced image generator yet into 4.0. The result is image generation that's not only beautiful, but actually useful. Sporting a t-shirt with a large OpenAI logo. Handwriting looks natural and a bit messy. And it could generate all of that text as provided correctly. That in particular, like the diagramming here is really good. And we see the photographer's reflection actually working. That's nuts. That is nuts, actually. Selfie view of the photographer as she turns around to high five. That's insane. The high five is cringe as hell because hands are hard for AI. But other than that, this is really good. There's a reflection tool. Let's test out the reflection stuff then. Apparently it's really good at this. So let's hop back to one that works. Put this developer next to a whiteboard with a slight reflection. While it's generating, as we've seen, it takes a second. I'll continue reading. Where did I put that post? Here. From the first cave paintings to modern infographics, humans have used visual imagery to communicate, persuade, and analyze, not just to decorate. Today's generative models can conjure surreal, breathtaking scenes, but struggle with the workhorse imagery people use to share and create information. From logos to diagrams, images can convey precise meaning when augmented with symbols that refer to shared language and experience. 4.0's Image Gen excels at accurately rendering text, precisely following prompts, and leveraging 4.0's inherent knowledge base in chat context, including transforming uploaded images or using them as visual inspiration. Capabilities make it easier to create exactly the image you envision, helping you communicate more effectively through visuals and advancing image generation into a practical tool with precision and power. Character consistency is an actually hard problem. I'll watch one of these, sure. Oh God, is there music? There better not be music. Every time. I just want to watch these videos without getting DMCA struck. Don't do this to me. That means we can't watch the video. I muted it. Are there at least subtitles, maybe? Nope, of course not. God damn it. They trained the model on a joint distribution of images and text, learning not just how images relate to language, but how they relate to each other. Combined with aggressive post-training, the resulting model has surprising visual fluency, capable of generating images that are useful, consistent, and context-aware. Yeah, that reflection stuff is nuts. The fact that I just put them in front of a whiteboard and it's decent. Put the following text on the whiteboard. Reasons Theo is awesome. 1, his mustache is pristine. 2, he's really good at coding. 3, T3 Chat is the best AI chat app by a mile. 4, have you seen that jawline? There's a lot of potential here. One thing I do want to test quick, just out of curiosity, most of the image gen models are sensitive about generating certain things. Donald J. Trump eating ice cream in a park. From my experience, many models are hesitant to generate images of relevant figures, especially political ones. I had a meme that blew up last year. Let me see if I can find it. Theo min faves 50,000. Media. Nope. There it is. When Mike Tyson lost the fight, I generated this image and I had to hop between like 8 providers to find one that would let me make an image with Kamala Harris in it, because all of them auto blocked anything trying to use her even after the election. Whereas here, it seems like they don't care. Not bad, but back when I could get Midjourney to generate images of Trump, I had a much better experience with it. I go to my yeah. I generated these pictures of Trump 65 weeks ago. End of 2023, I was able to generate this with Midjourney. It's pretty nuts that it's been over a year and a half. Right, Priya said it's been over a year, nearly a year and a half, and Midjourney's still just so good in comparison. Like, it got some very good images at the time. This is close. It's better than it was by a lot. But on the topic of things it's not supposed to be able to generate, new ChatGPT image gen can draw sexy men, but not sexy women. Sam replies, that's a bug. It should be allowed. We'll fix. Hot guy, though. So good. So good. What is this? Oh, same thing. Yeah. How did it do with that text on the wall? That's great. A few more changes. Make the hair taller, styled up with hair wax, brown eyes, stronger jawline, nice collared shirt with a floral pattern. I need a new profile picture, guys. Don't blame me. More voluminous is probably a better phrasing for that. Ask it to draw me. Not the worst idea. Let's have it draw me today, actually. I'll go to my live stream, wait for it to show me. Hi. And in just a moment, hopefully have a good picture of me. Perfect. Oh, it made my hair not blonde anymore. Draw a picture of me. Make sure his hair is still blonde. Make it less voluminous and get less tall and messier too. It is doing very good though, and the reflections and the fact that they're like getting updated is pretty nuts. This might be my default like quick image generation model. Something I'll do a lot is I'll take a picture of like Tim Cook. Let's just grab this random photo of Tim Cook, hop over. Make him look way more excited. Still figuring that out. The top to bottom thing is still very weird to me. Oh, look at that. Did a pretty good job. I'm impressed. Not bad at all. Figured out the mic. It screwed up the logo for the mic, but other than that, did a pretty good job. Pretty honorable attempt at my shirt too. I'm impressed. I don't want to close that because then all the other generations will break. This one just got stuck. Fun. Overall, not bad though. My last question is the API. Is this exposed over API? Generating this much text in an image with AI is pretty nuts. Apparently, API access is not there yet. It will roll out in the next few weeks. A big thing they push is the coherency across multiple prompts. So once you have a character, like in this case, a cat, it will allow you to make changes to it without losing track of what they look like, even though it just lost track of my hair color. It seems pretty good at this, where this cat's particular coat with the black nose, the little bit of orange, is still honored here. The little bit of orange appears to be gone, but it's so close, most people wouldn't notice. And then puts it in the game. Oh, his nose stopped being orange and black, so it's not super accurate, but it's more than I would have expected from something like this. Pretty cool that you can make a character and then generate different UI for mocking out game scenes. I know this seems cringe because like who wants an AI generated game? Nobody wants a proper game generated like this. But this is super useful for storyboarding as you're figuring out a game really early stages. While other systems struggle with 5 to 8 objects, 4.0 can handle up to 10 to 20 different objects. The tighter binding of objects to their traits and relations allows for better control. Square image containing a 4 row by 4 column grid containing 16 objects. Listed them, and it did it. That's pretty cool. Vehicle with triangular wheels. Now put the photo in New York. Ooh, what's this? Don't know what happened there with the formatting of this. Make an image of what this means to you is the prompt after being given a 3JS renderer to render this text in 3D. For some reason, this feels a little more expensive than running the actual app, but it's pretty cool that it can generate what it thinks this will render. That's nuts. That's actually pretty cool. Karl Marx hurriedly walking through a parking lot of Mall of America. That's hilarious. Cat looking into a puddle, and the reflection is that of a tiger. Both reflections are realistically distorted by ripples in the water. That's pretty nuts, actually. I'm seeing it. It's nice seeing all of these prompts without a shot on iPhone, which is an old trick to make it generate more realistic looking images. I was about to ask, where is the limitation section? They always publish what it's bad at, and I was just waiting to see it. Model's not perfect. We're aware of multiple limitations. Cropping. They'll occasionally crop larger images like posters too tightly, especially near the bottom. Hallucinations. It will still make up info. So here it made up countries. Did it? Well, it's putting Egypt multiple times, Vietnam and DR Congo multiple times. High binding problem. Might struggle to render more than 10 to 20 distinct concepts at once, like a periodic table. Interesting. This is my new periodic table of elements. I'm saving this. Beautiful. Precise graphing. 1717, 1920. So this is just like graphs you would see on Fox News. Struggles with non-Latin characters. That makes sense. Everything does. Editing precision. Asked it to swap steps 2 and 3, and it failed to. Just removed the 2 there entirely. Dense information with small text. I can see why it would struggle with that. And then the safety section. They've embedded C2PA metadata, which will identify an image as coming from GPT-4o to provide transparency. We've also built an internal search tool that uses technical attributes of generations to help verify if content came from our model. Interesting. So they shipped this with a tool to check if a given image was generated by them or not. Where is that tool? Can I use that right now? Oh, it's an internal search tool. So no. I wanted to see how quickly I could work around that as a Photoshop guy. RIP. Be cool if they published that, but I see why they can't, because it'd be too easy to use that to figure out if you've gamed it or not. Continuing to block requests for generated images that may violate our content policy, such as things that I can't say in a YouTube video. When images of real people are in context, we have heightened restrictions regarding what kinds of imagery can be created. Okay, this is a good call out. Instead of preventing you from generating images with sensitive figures like political figures, famous people, and whatnot, they are limiting how much you can do with those people. So I couldn't ask it to generate an image of Donald Trump doing something inappropriate, but it's fine with generating an image of him eating ice cream. So my guess is if I was to go back and ask, let's try this. An image of Mike Tyson and Kamala Harris holding each other in a sad embrace. It's almost the exact prompt I gave to generate the image I went viral with. Still can't believe I went so viral with that stupid post. Yeah, it's more than willing to. That's cool. If the image isn't potentially harmful, make them fight each other now. See if that will flag. Looks like it's determining if this is safe or not. tab bar. Oh, why is it stuck in loading? Yeah, that's just how they do things. Image request rejected. That's hilarious. So the tab got updated, but the UI is stuck in the loading state because hydrating updates and notification statuses is hard. When I started refreshing, it updated, but it didn't. That's funny. The title got changed. My request got removed from the chat history. Hilarious. Okay. That was roughly what I expected it to do, but still kind of funny. Where's... Yeah. Another cool thing is you're able to describe what you need for stuff like aspect ratios, exact colors with hex codes, or even transparent backgrounds. That's a huge thing none of the other ones do right now. Can I just make the background transparent? Is it going to leave the title as rejected? I have so many issues with how like the title and metadata updates work in the OpenAI app. But I'm very curious how it handles background removal here. Now the question is that grid provided by them to show it's transparent, or is that grid one of the fake transparent backgrounds you get on Google Images? Very excited to see which it is. Oh, I forgot to check on Tim Cook. Yeah, Tim Cook is so excited now. Remove the background so it is... Make the background transparent. We'll see how it does for that one too. Oh yeah, that's a real transparent background. And if I open that up in Affinity... In case you guys didn't know, I am actually a graphics professional. I do all my thumbnails and whatnot myself. I'm getting more help from Ben lately, but I have done professional graphics for the better part of 2 decades now, actually. So this is something I'm very familiar with, and it did a very good job. Yeah, the edges are smooth. There's a little choppiness like here in his ear, but really good overall. Can I upscale it? Upscale the image to be higher resolution. Because the default res here was pretty tiny. Yeah, 1024 is not a big image. Transparent background for our friend Tim here is struggling a bit. Oh, then it just spits it out. Yeah. For context, the UX for all of this on this side is significantly better. It doesn't have the ability to remove the background in Midjourney, but it does have a lot of settings to show you what you can and can't do. You can change the model version, obviously. You can switch modes, but you can also change the aspect ratio. You can change how stylized it'll be. You can pick between the different speed options, which affects cost. You can even personalize if you choose to. But once an image is done, like let's say we like this one, you can also create variations of it or upscale it. So I can do a subtle upscale, and now it's going to generate that image again, but much higher resolution if I want to use it for different things. Okay, let's see if it actually made that higher res. It does not look like it did. It actually looks like, yeah, exactly same resolution. Cool. You'd think it would at least tell you that it can't do that. Pumped about this, though. I'm sure this won't be used to spread misinformation on the internet. There's literally no way anybody's going to use this to do bad things. Yeah. I think that's all I have to say on this one. I'm really impressed. The biggest takeaways here are the reflection stuff and the text stuff being groundbreaking, and just the concept of using a language model as an image generator instead of it being so fundamentally different. It's fascinating. I wish they shared more details of like how they did that and the type of generation that this is doing. This diagram seems to be a hint. The tokens go through a transformer that then goes through diffusion that then spits out the pixels. Transfer between the modalities. We have P, text, pixel, sound, with one big autoregressive transformer. Image generation augmented with vast world knowledge, next level text, yada yada. Yeah. I wish we had a little more info. Is there a paper? Addendum to the 4.0 system card. Oh, shit. Unlike DALL-E, which operates as a diffusion model, 4.0 image generation is an autoregressive model natively embedded within ChatGPT. Okay. That is fascinating. Because it's embedded natively deep in the architecture of our omni-model GPT 4.0 model, 4.0 image generation can use everything it knows to apply these capabilities in subtle and expressive ways. Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. The last piece I have curiosity about is the Sora side. How does this work in and apply in Sora? Is it just using this new stuff as the initial image gen? Let me hide this while I sign in. Cool, I'm in. No more credits. Okay, so if I tell it to generate this first image again, image of no, it makes it a video by default. Oh, sorry, Zem, for keeping you here for this. We can wrap this one up and then dive right into that. Sorry. Yeah. If there's stuff to figure out with the video side, I'll do that later. I'll wrap this up for now. I'll figure that out in a bit. Anyways. You know what? We'll film the outro later. So I'll cut this now. Marker, end of OpenAI images for now. Cool. We'll get through the rest of this later. That's going to take its time. Cool. Marker, next exploit. By now, you've probably heard about the Next.js security incident. Middleware can effectively be skipped entirely. This is really, really bad, putting hundreds of thousands of Next apps at risk, right? There is a lot of subtlety here that we have to dig into. There's a lot of things Vercel did absolutely wrong, and I am excited to roast them indefinitely for it. But there are other things here that are just fundamentally being misunderstood. And for what it's worth, I have not seen any apps myself that would have been vulnerable to this, despite having And for what it's worth, I've never seen an app that would have been vulnerable to this, despite the fact that I've audited literally hundreds of Next.js apps. That doesn't mean this is okay, but it does make the characteristics of the exploit so much more interesting. So if you want a video that's just going to bash Vercel endlessly for bothering to ship Next.js that's focused on people who don't use it at all, go watch something else. But if you want an actual deep dive figuring out what went wrong, why we're here, what problems led to the outrage and the incident in the first place, and how to prevent these things going forward, this is the video to watch. I'm very excited to break all of this down with you, but as Vercel is no longer a sponsor of the channel, someone has to cover the bill. So we're going to hear a quick word from today's sponsor and then go right back in. So I have put together a demo app here to showcase the exploit. There's a couple pieces I want to emphasize. We have two different routes that matter. We have this admin route that has a layout and a page. We have the unauth route, which just has a page that says you're not supposed to be wherever you're going. And I have this sensitive.txt, this text data that I want to make sure only gets to a user if they're allowed. The middleware is a function that runs between when Next starts to process your request and the user who's making that request. So if we diagram this out really quick, the hierarchy of things should hopefully be pretty clear. We have our user. The user wants to make a request to go to some page. The first thing that happens when the user makes the request is if you have a middleware file, it gets hit. So the middleware is this layer that exists between the user and whatever they are trying to do on your service. The middleware will take this request, we'll say it's to /admin, and it will make a decision based on characteristics of this request as to where to send this. You might have these two different pages. We have /unauthed, and we have /admin. And the middleware decides where this request actually ends up going. Does it go to /unauthed, or does it go to /admin? And in the code I've written here, the thing that decides it is pretty simple. I have this cookie that's super secure named isAdmin. If you don't have the isAdmin cookie set and the request is to /admin, then I redirect you to /unauthed. So if I go to my service here and we go to /admin, we get this "you aren't supposed to go wherever you just went" text. But if I change my local cookies by going into storage, cookies, none of those are bad. I'm going to clear them all anyways. Annoying. Give me 1 second to clear out my cookies in this browser. Is there no clear all? Oh, delete all. Cool. There we go. Cool. So if I go add the isAdmin cookie, I'll set the value to true. Cool. We now have this new cookie isAdmin. And if I go to /admin again, it lets us through. So what's the exploit? Let me go grab the link about it quick. The exploit is a way to bypass that middleware layer with a specific header. So if I currently was to go curl that page, let me just open up my terminal and do that. Curl HTTP localhost 3000 /admin, it redirects to /unauthed. And if I give it the header, you know what? I'm not smart enough to do this. t3.chat, write a curl request that hits localhost 3000 /admin with the cookie, or with a cookie named is admin set to true. Cool. Thank you, T3 chat. We paste that, and now we're getting an actual response that is the content of that page that we're not supposed to have access to. Not good. Or that's fine. This makes sense because I put in the cookie. If this was a real cookie for a real service, that'd be fine. Obviously, we shouldn't just check if it exists. We should check if it's valid or not. Fine. The problem is if we put in that specific header, remove the cookie, and instead add the following header. Give it the value true as well. So here I am telling my server with a header that this is a middleware sub request. If I copy this, paste it, it still is trying to redirect to unauthed. Very interesting. What's going on there? If we hop here, I have this pinned at 15.2. You don't think I sent the header? I need the name of the middleware. Oh. Header value split to create a list using the column character as a separator, and then check if the list contains middlwareinfo.name. We completely ignored. Ah. So if I add that, nope. Source middleware. Nope. And 15 is a different value. I can't get this to work. Just middleware? Nope. It used to be underscore middleware. It hasn't been for a while. Middleware 5 times repeated with spaces. It's middleware TS in source. It's not only for pages router, it's for app router too. No. Ah. Now the following. Fun. Let's do that then. Thank you, chat. That does it. Okay, that's silly. So in order to bypass that cookie check, we have to do this really fascinating call here where middleware subrequest is middleware : middleware : middleware : middleware : middleware. Interesting. That works though. Wild. And this is obviously really bad. If you're doing auth inside of your middleware and you're trying to access data, or if you're doing auth in your middleware and someone hits your service with that very strange header, they can now bypass all of the things you might have been protecting through middleware. Which, if you don't know Next well, sounds like the most terrifying thing in the world. But here's where I'm going to start roasting Vercel in a way you guys might not expect. Things Vercel did wrong. Big thing number 1. Middleware is terribly named. Vercel has this bad habit of giving things names to try to showcase the conceptual place it fits, but not the actual use case or behaviors it's good for. Middleware is a term for a thing between the main logic and the requester for that logic. But usually when people talk about middleware, they imply something specific, which is the thing that does all the common work between different requests. If you're used to using tools like Express or backend frameworks in other languages, middleware is the stuff that you use always. Every request goes through middleware, and all of your auth logic and things like that tend to live in that middleware layer. This article, or the disclosure article, even makes the same assumption here. First off, they call Next a complete framework, which if you know anything about Next, you know it is not. Next has no concept of auth in it. It isn't a complete framework. This is bad framing and has me concerned about how much the researcher actually knows about what Next is and does. It's not comparable to something like Laravel or Rails. It doesn't have any of these parts. And then they imply with the middleware that it's an important and widely used feature, specifically for authentication and authorization. If you've used Next for a while, a lot of red flags should be going off in your head because you should not be using it that way. Middleware in Next.js is not a good place to do auth. Next.js middleware is a glorified, I'm going to rewrite this. Next.js middleware is a glorified switch statement for routing. When I was talking about this on Twitter, somebody replied, wait, so it's basically just an early return? Yes, that is the right way to think about middleware and Next. The reason that this middleware layer exists is because you shouldn't have to boot up your whole Next app to do certain things. If you have a page that a user is trying to get to that requires them to be signed in, it'd be very convenient if you could just redirect them to the sign-in page instead. That is what this is for. It is meant to be a route level helper. Generally speaking, if you're hitting database in middleware, you're using it wrong. If you are protecting data with middleware, you're using it wrong. And I understand why people would. Not only have they named it terribly, like this should not be named middleware. That is not what it is. I would name it like route interceptor or something, because that's what it actually does. Next.js's middleware concept is not what we know of as middleware. And this has caused them problems in the past because, one more fun fact, Next.js middleware doesn't run in Node. Yes, crazy enough, the Next.js middleware wasn't built for Node because it's built to run before the Node service spins up. The goal of this is to let you not have to spin up your whole Next.js app. Instead, you have this tiny file that is fully isolated from the rest of your code base that can do the little bit of work necessary to make sure the user goes to the right place. The best case for something like this is handling stuff like localization. If I have a user in a specific region that isn't English speaking that is trying to go to /shop/item/item ID, I might want them to actually go to /en/shop/item/item ID. Middleware is phenomenal at this. This is what it is good for. It can take this URL and based on characteristics of the request, quietly rewrite it or redirect it under the hood. I can redirect here, but I can also rewrite here. And now the URL that the user sees won't be different, but the experience the user has will be. They have added experimental support for running the Next middleware in Node if you're deploying on something like Docker and you want support for the middleware layer. But generally speaking, in those environments, you probably don't want to be using the middleware at all because its strength is as a glorified switch statement, not as an actual primitive that you're relying on to do anything in your app. The middleware for all of the stuff we have shipped at Ping is hilariously small. If we hop to the T3 chat repo, we don't even have a middleware in here. Yeah, we literally don't. But if I go to pick thing, for example, where we do, because we use clerk there, here's the middleware we have for clerk. The clerk middleware here isn't blocking access to anything. All this is doing by default is adding the right data to the headers for this request so that we know once it gets to our server who you are. It validates the cookies so that we have them by the time it makes it to our stuff. And even that isn't a great use case for middleware. I much prefer doing this through stuff like tRPC. If we find in this code base, I'm sure I have the API tRPC route. We can use this to follow back to the tRPC context. Here is where I'm actually checking auth. This is real code running on our servers for our Next app that verifies auth by calling the auth function. As soon as you call the auth function anywhere in your code base that isn't the middleware TS file, this problem is solved. And if you're doing something like in this example, where we are reading the sensitive file, we should be checking first that the person is who they say they are. So if we don't have this is admin call pass, we should redirect them to the right place. So here we now check cookies. If admin, we redirect you, so here we're now doing this right. We're checking cookies, we're checking if the isAdmin cookie is set, and if not, we are redirecting the way that you would have done in middleware. If you're accessing sensitive data in your code, the path to that code, ideally in the same place as that code, should clearly call out who can access it and the permissions for that thing. Permissions are not a route level problem. Permissions are an access level problem. And if you're writing code that allows for access to data blindly, your routing table is not how you define what a user should or shouldn't be able to do. And as far as I have seen, there are no real apps that do their authentication exclusively in the middleware. I've never seen that in my life. The only reason you would do that is if you're coming from other frameworks, and also, frankly, you read the docs without reading the details. This is where I started to get spicy. I was part of this long thread where people were talking about why shouldn't we do auth in the middleware, because other people, like Shaddix here, said auth middleware shouldn't be doing much other than redirecting you to the sign-in page if you don't have a session, right? It'd be pretty scary to use that Next middleware as your only access control. Aaron, the creator of Replication Zero, asked why not. I said that Next middleware is not part of the Node runtime. It runs before the Next app is hit, meant to allow for quick routing changes and not much else. He then cited this page from the Next docs that lists authentication and authorization in the use cases for middleware. This is really bad. That is embarrassingly bad. So much so that I called it out here. I said, what the fuck are you saying in the docs, guys? Tagged in Lee, and within a couple minutes, he had published a PR removing that section entirely because we should not be encouraging the use of middleware in Next for auth. That's not what it's for. It's an optimistic routing layer to send the user to the right place. That's all it's meant to be for. So the first big thing Vercel did wrong, middleware is atrociously named. It is not what that is for, and I understand why people are confused because they're coming from other places where middleware means a specific thing, and it doesn't mean that thing here. I see one fair call out, which is the only issue with using auth code in your actual code, like we did here with the admin check, is that you can't cache it because it's not going to allow for static generation if we're doing dynamic stuff. Yeah. Data that needs to be behind an auth wall of some form should absolutely be dynamic. You should not expose data that needs an auth wall in a static fashion because you cannot trust the cache. Colin and I are going to disagree on a lot of this because I'm mad at how they've treated middleware historically. Yeah. The next point makes me want to rename this things that hurt Vercel here. I'm going to rename this because not all of these are necessarily their fault. The next point's an interesting one. Vercel is having a full company off-site right now. This is hilarious to me. The timing is so unfortunate. But at this moment, pretty much every Vercel employee is at a whole company on-site event where they're all hanging out together in person. Vercel is a super remote company. So this is bad timing because having everybody in one place, half of them on airplanes in the moment, means your ability to respond to these types of things is not where it normally would be. That combined with the fact that a lot of people have gripes against Vercel. This allowed for a lot of people who are angry at Vercel to go off because security issues, rightfully, are a thing that we as a community are very sensitive to. So if you're a person that has an incentive to make Vercel look bad, you're going to take the opportunity. And credit where it's due, people like Dax were a really reasonable middle ground here, where obviously they love dunking on Vercel, but they actually know Next well enough to know the characteristics of why this is or isn't a big deal, which it isn't. One more good note from my security research friend here, Thomas. It's also worth noting that if you try to use middleware in the way that it normally works, which is adding a user object to the context, then it's not super likely this affects you because skipping the middleware means routes won't have a user object in context. Very important point. The value of middleware as an auth check isn't that it's blocking you, it's that it's adding information to the request. So you could imagine how right here, I might add new data to the response before I do the rewrite or redirect in order to have more context on who you are. I use the cookie to check who you are, get your user info, and then add that as additional context on the request before it makes it to Next.js. As long as I'm checking the user object on the request somewhere, we're fine. The point being is that the only way this would affect you is if you don't do any additional auth checks or even checking the data that comes from your auth layer anywhere else in your app. It's also worth noting if you use pretty much any of the tools that I recommend, this won't be a problem for you either. Stuff like TRPC fully circumvents this by having its own layer that I showed a bit of before. Here I'm checking the auth that is coming from, in this case, clerk, that has been attached to the headers that exist in this request instance. And now I have this session data all over. So if I go down to my protected procedure code here, if I don't have a session user ID, I throw an error. That makes it effectively impossible for you to access sensitive data that's behind one of these procedures, because this code can only be hit if you have a valid session on the request. More from Zem here. This is what makes me a bit skeptical about it affecting Next.auth, which, if you're not familiar, Next.auth is an open source package that's iffy on how well maintained it is. It's hard to confirm, but it seems like you can't just drop the entire middleware and have it fail. My assumption there would be if you call any auth check or user check anywhere, that it will just 500 error because the data doesn't exist because you bypass the layer that adds that data. The harsh way of putting it is, if your app is able to be exploited by this, there's probably a lot of other ways to exploit your app. The only reasonable thing I could fathom that would allow for an app to be exploited by this would be an internal tool that has its own internal auth that is exposed to the internet publicly for some reason, where all signed-in users have full permission to everything, and you're using middleware because you're too lazy to implement any actual auth anywhere else. That's the only fathomable set of edge cases I can comprehend that results in this being an actual exploit. Which is what leads us to the next unfortunate thing for Vercel. 4. The 9.1 severity makes people's brains fall out. The severity that was marked for the CVE was very high, because in the cases where you are using this as your only layer for auth, it's very severe. The combination of high severity, CVE, the term middleware, and the term auth has resulted in our monkey brains creating a word cloud that makes this seem absolutely atrociously bad. And I get it. If you don't know what middleware is used for in Next because it's named wrong, you have bad takes on Vercel because you've had reasonable problems with them and you have a negative. And I understand why we would get there. If you're expecting middleware to mean a thing it doesn't because Next named it wrong, and you have had a bad experience deploying Next other places because it's not built to deploy serverless in places other than Vercel, and you see a 9.1 severity issue that affects auth and middleware, you're going to be outraged. And that makes all the sense in the world. What makes it much worse is that the majority of people talking about this incident don't even use Next. This was so frustrating to me. When I saw all the posts about this and the severity of it, every single one of them that got over 1,000 likes for the first 24 hours was somebody who doesn't actually use Next.js at all or understand it. There are people saying, wasn't Vercel late to the fix? Not quite. If we timeline this, the disclosure was February 28th, if I recall. Might have been more recent than that. Let's check. Okay, here's the timeline. 227, the vulnerability report between the maintainers. It did specify an old version. Second follow-up 2 days later, saying that all versions were vulnerable, including latest stable releases. Initial response from the Vercel team saying that version 12 was no longer maintained. Another follow-up email the same day saying the team would take a look at the second email security template. 311, another email sent to find out whether or not the new information had been taken into account. Okay, so this doesn't clarify. These two are follow-ups that the researcher did. So it seems like this is another one of the misfortunate things. Original report was for a version of Next that is no longer maintained. And the disclosure updated that report instead of filing a new one. This is not an excuse. This is a bad misfortune of the nature of how these things are managed internally. I don't need my timeline here. We have theirs, which is fine. By the time Vercel confirmed that they had this new information and it was being taken into account, they had patched it within 24 hours. By the time Vercel actually knew and understood what this exploit was, it was patched insanely quickly. The problem, and this isn't a fault of the person who reported here, the disclosure made a reasonable assumption that they could follow up the previous email, and whatever system they're using to triage all of this internally made it less clear that this was a big deal. Apparently, Vercel has their own proper timeline breaking down a lot of these things too. We got a disclosure that was initially for old versions. Additional email got sent in a new thread, which extended the affected scope. Multiple reports submitted, internal conversations. Triaging was delayed. They began investigating on the 5th, planning to handle these, or they started planning on the 5th, outlining plans to do an LTS policy, which would place Next 11 and 12 out of support. Security team raised the report to the Next team to begin researching impact and remediation options. The Next engineering team confirmed the vulnerability as valid. Since Next can be hosted multiple ways, they had to confirm all the different ways. They found a validation method that handles almost all the cases. Published the patch. Published the CVE. Made it public. The CVE did not state immediately whether Vercel applications were impacted. It was later updated. We quickly published a changelog on Vercel stating customers were protected. Changelog used the same template from our last resolution, which mentioned our firewall. This was another one of those owns, and I'll put that in the list. 7, Vercel disclosure had an ad for their firewall product. Another massive misfortune, because they were rushing to get this out. And when they did that, wrong, where did I lose the tab to? When they did that, they used a template from previous issues that included an ad for the firewall, which made it look like an upsell, which is not fortunate. I did see a lot of people skeptical about why this wasn't published on their socials and all these other things. And I would like to remind them, the whole company was flying out at that moment. A lot of the people who would have done those things are people who are remote that have to fly. So it makes all the sense in the world that they were offline. I even talked to a few of them. They're like, holy shit, what happened when I was in the air? Here's their technical analysis. Pattern that some Next applications adopt is using middleware to optimistically verify a user's auth state by checking cookies. If an auth cookie is set, you can early redirect to the logged in application or block specific routes. We do not recommend middleware to be the sole method of protecting routes in your application. And if you read through the docs and see how they recommend doing auth, they are clear with that, even if the one page on middleware was unclear about that. And that page was horrible. They should not have discussed it in the way that they did. Big mistake on their part. But the docs themselves, as you go deeper, do clarify this. The reason that they even have this header, if you're curious, why would this exploit happen, is to prevent recursion. Because if you have one page, let's say you have middleware set up to protect auth routes or API routes, and I want to get something from API. So I have API/route, or I have API, and then in here I have route TS, export, function, get, request. I don't even think I'll need this. And here I need to get the const async sensitive data. So if I have this internal API endpoint that gets the sensitive data, and I want to call that from in here, the call I make in here to get that data, const from API equals await, I could even do /API here. This shouldn't have to go through middleware again because it already did. And you can see how quickly we'd end up in recursive hell if all of these are calling middleware, getting redirected or rewritten to the wrong place. People have gotten some pretty scary Vercel builds because middleware failed and they got stuck in redirect loops, which is why they added the sub request functionality here in order to prevent middleware from being hit on these internal requests. It's very unfortunate you could hijack that externally by applying that header. But when you remember what the goal of middleware is, which is an optimistic layer to run between the user and the server, it makes sense. It's just a bad set of intentions for the product, name and marketing of the product, implementation of the product, workarounds around that implementation for edge cases within the product, communication of all of this, and the process to get these things reported and triaged. All of these little pieces collided in something that results in to be frank, really bad optics. This sucks for Vercel. The ratio of affected users to brand hit that they're going to take here is absurd. But it's also somewhat deserved because a handful of these mistakes are entirely their fault, and they should have done more before. I have been yelling at Vercel for how badly this is named for a while. I've also been yelling at other companies for recommending middleware as an auth layer for even longer. I have been roasting Clerk for over 2 years about this because most of our support requests for T3 chat, and the reason I've been roasting Clerk for so long is that most of our requests for support in the upload thing world were because their default middleware blocked upload thing. It also blocked webhooks. It also blocked Stripe. It also blocked pretty much anything you can do with tRPC by default because middleware's the wrong place to do auth blocking. If you want to prevent a user from accessing something, the thing itself should check. I haven't read this part yet, so I'm curious what Vercel's next steps are. The first big piece is they're doing a partner mailing list. They're opening up this list for companies that host Next so that they can disclose things privately first before they go public. They're also going to simplify how issues get reported. They've consolidated security at Vercel and responsible disclosure at Vercel so that they both use GitHub's private vulnerability reporting. This is a huge thing. My guess is that the email about this report went to security at Vercel when it should have went to the responsible disclosure email because this one goes to the Vercel security team, which has nothing to do with the Next.js open source project team. They're also improving how the teams actually respond to disclosures and enhance their runbooks when Next.js vulnerabilities are disclosed. Long-term support, they now have an actual LTS policy, which I guess they didn't before, which is interesting. Deployment adapters, vulnerability relied on an internal header that was undocumented. That's, yeah. It's also worth noting that Cloudflare, in their attempts to fix this, broke a bunch of other things with middleware. So, yeah. And then we have the security assessment. We're further investigating if there are additional places to improve the security of middleware. All subsequent issues uncovered will follow the new CVE process. Good. Finally. I do want to showcase one rough thing, though. You might have noticed I put this layout here. Why? Why would I care about writing a layout here? The reason is some very unintuitive behavior that bit us originally when we put up upload thing at first. If I was to go back to our little diagram I drew earlier, we can think a little deeper about the hierarchy here. After middleware, we're actually going to the app, and that app has multiple layers. Let's ignore the unauthed path for now. We'll just have the happy path. The user is trying to go to /admin, but we don't go straight to /admin. We go a few other places along the way. First, we have to go to the root /layout. The root layout is this file here that handles things like your fonts, your metadata, and it also generates the HTML in the body. This is the first thing that is hit when a request is made to your service after the middleware. So once the middleware is approved or rejected the request, added whatever it's going to it, the root layout gets hit. Then the child that gets mounted, the children here, are whatever the URL dictates based on the URL you have. So if you have multiple layouts throughout the URL, because every chunk of the URL can have its own layout, those layouts get hit, and then you get to page TSX. So the child of this body tag here is going to be admin layout, and then the child of this is going to be admin page. So we get the root layout, then we get admin layout, and then finally we get admin page. This is the layers a request goes through in order to properly get generated in Next. So you would think auth checks in these layers would protect you. If I had an auth check, if I just moved this out of admin page and instead put it in the layout here, this all seems fine and dandy, and it might even work. If I remove this cookie, yeah. Or is that because the middleware is doing it? That might be because the middleware is still doing its thing. Let's comment out the middleware. Cool, there we go. You can't see the URL because it's being covered by my face, but it did change. So I have this to /admin, and when I hit enter, it gets changed to /unauthorized or unauth, because that is happening in the layout here, because I have a redirect to /unauth if you hit that case. Why am I talking about all this? Well, it turns out if you can get through this layer in any way, you can access page data for anything. So if you're checking your auth in layout, the separation between these sections is great enough that you have a vulnerability there as well. So if instead of /admin, I'm going to a user profile, we'll say it's user 1. And then we go to user 1's page. If I can break through here via user 2, it is actually possible to get in a state where from the user 2 auth check you passed, you can hijack the user 1 page. So you can desync effectively the layout that you accessed and the page that gets rendered underneath it. Reproing this is nearly impossible. It requires some crazy network reverse engineering tools that I do not have, but someone was able to, right when we dropped but somebody was able, right when we dropped upload thing, to add and remove files from my app through their dashboard by circumventing that layout. Genuinely terrifying. So this is something that no one talks about. I know that because when I ran into the problem, people thought I was insane. The official Vercel recommendation is to not auth check in layout, not do anything but rendering your layout in layout. But this is scary. This is very scary. So how are we supposed to do auth if we can't do it in middleware and layouts? Vercel has this awesome article that Sebastian wrote a while back. I did a whole video on it. This is where the taint gets introduced. If you're not familiar, watch the Theo React taint video. It's a classic. Their recommendation is that you pick between a couple different options. Your data should be accessed through one of these. HTTP APIs, like classic, you have an old service on Python or Go or something, and you're just using Next to hit those, even on server side. You have the data access layer, which is what's recommended for new projects. This is what we use for all of our stuff. If you're using TRPC as your layer for getting data, you're using a data access layer already. And then the component level data access. This is for prototyping and learning, in their words, like what I just did here, where I'm accessing data by just reading it from file system. That is component level data access. If you were calling SQL directly in line here, same deal. The data access layer is their recommended way to do things. And they even have the example, data/auth, where I have my getCurrentUser function that gets the auth cookie, decrypts and validates it, and then returns the user. Now I have my server-only file in data/user_DTO, can see username, viewer user, public info, return true. Can see phone number. Viewer is admin or team equals the viewer team. Get profile DTO. You grab the rows where it matches the slug. We get the current user. Return username, can see username. We show it. Phone number, can see phone number. Show it. The point here being any data that is accessed in your app needs to be broken out into an access layer of some form, both for the sake of maintainability and code review. If you don't do something like this, good luck. But also because it's the right way to do it safely. When you have one thing to check auth and all of the functionality that requires auth exists in the same folder and you can check each function to make sure it's checking, great. Or if you have an API system like tRPC, or GraphQL, or an external service using something like Express, you're good. The important piece to understand here about Next is that, to go back to the article here, Next is not a complete framework. This is not a good framing of what Next is. When I hear a complete framework and then you immediately follow that with middleware, the expectation is you're comparing this to something like Express or Next.js that has a real middleware concept, that has a real auth concept, that has a real context and all these pieces. Next.js, to its strengths and weaknesses, is a very primitive framework. It gives you the pieces to assemble. The same way that React doesn't really have a concept of global state and you have to add it yourself using the primitives, Next doesn't have a concept of global auth and you have to build it yourself using the primitives. That is why I love Next, but it's also why Next gets thrown into so much shit all the time, and it's why a lot of people do things so terribly with Next. It's the reason you can squeeze out unbelievable performance in it. It's the reason T3 chat is as good as it is, because I could turn off all the Next stuff I don't want and work around certain parts to add my own solutions. But it's also why there are some terrible performing Next apps, because if you're using those primitives wrong or you're making bad assumptions about them, it's very easy to build something slow. One of the most common performance issues I've seen in Next apps is using middleware for something really slow, like checking your database. If your database is slow to respond, adding a middleware just made your entire site significantly slower. Generally speaking, I try to not include middleware if I don't have to, and if I do, I make it as fast as possible, find cache layers to avoid it being hit, and then make sure I match out any static content so that it only gets hit during routing. Oh, I got a super chat on YouTube. Sorry for missing that. Oh shit! Thank you, Nick Gordon, for the support. Really appreciate it. No offense, but it's a lot more than $20 for me to do a code base audit. Appreciate the support, though. Thank you so much for that. Funny enough, Next is currently working on some new functionality that's in experimental for not implementing auth. Like, they're not giving you an auth check function, but they're giving you helper functions you can call when your auth checks fail. So if I have a verify session function from wherever I'm doing my auth check, and the role is not admin in this case, and we're on the admin page, I can call the forbidden function as a helper from Next to get you out of this path. But that is what Next's concept is. It's not how do you do auth, it's little primitives for how to get out of it. So quick answer to this. I've yet to see an app that's actually vulnerable. So it's not a foot gun. It's a bunch of bad decisions Vercel made that have nothing to do with the auth layer. Also of note is that's actually a good point. I cut what I just said straight to here. One more piece of note with these forbidden helpers is you cannot call them in layouts. You can only call them in server components, actions, and route handlers, which prevents them from being hit in the insecure case with the layout wrapper that I just showed. This is an awesome step in the right direction, but again, the direction is primitives. Next isn't a complete framework that provides these concepts in depth. Next is a primitive framework that adds these concepts as pieces you can assemble and build yourself. This only says root layout. Can you call that in other layouts, like nested ones? It just says root layout. I don't care enough to try it, but I might have been wrong with this not working in layout. And if I am, hey Vercel, hey Next team, I know you're watching this. These functions better not fucking work in layouts. Don't do this to me. You made this hard enough as is. Let's wrap this up with my requests to Vercel. These are the things I think should happen to make my life easier so I don't have to deal with these things as much in the future. Request 1, obviously, jump on CVEs really hard and really, really early. Duh. Hopefully I don't have to clarify that. Point 2, please stop using names that don't mean what they usually do. The classic example I've been bitching about here forever is use client. I still think this is one of the biggest fumbles in modern software design. Not use client. Use client is fine. The problem is the mirror. Use server. If you understand what use client does, you almost certainly no longer understand what use server is for, because they have almost no overlap between the fact they're meant to be used together. There's a great Ryan Dahl quote from his talk, 10 Things I Regret About Node, where he effectively says, if you're thinking of an API design decision and your feeling is, oh, that's cute, I like it, scrap it. These cute decisions do nothing but cause you pain long term. And Next.js has made a handful of these that make me feel sick. I hate the way that these things get named sometimes, and it is very, very frustrating. Then again, I still defend names like Edge Runtime, because funny enough, that one actually was coined at Cloudflare, even though people at Cloudflare shit on Vercel for using it. It's a whole thing. Names need to not be colliding with existing concepts in people's heads. If they have a concept of what middleware is, they're going to assume when Next adds middleware that it is the same thing they are used to. Even if the dictionary definition of middleware does meet the way Next uses it, it does not meet the expectations that users have with this word. We need to stop doing this. It does nothing but make our lives harder, both me as an educator and you as the provider. When these things are named poorly, everyone's job becomes more difficult, and we are just waiting for incidents like this. I firmly believe if middleware was named correctly, this would not have been an issue at all. If this was route redirect layer can be hijacked and skipped, no one would have talked about it. But that adds to point 3, which is audit your fucking bullet point lists. This is the 3rd or 4th time one of these bullet point lists in the docs has screwed us. I am so tired of this problem. The bullet point list shouldn't be every theoretical capability of the thing. It should be the golden intended use cases with very clear blinders showing where those limitations are. This happened in the past when server actions, which are very specifically for actions that cause changes, mutations, so to speak, destructive actions, a server action, the way it was implemented for the last 2 years, should not be used for fetching data. Because if you have 2 components that need data and they're both doing it through server actions, they are blocking sequentially. You can't do 2 server actions at the same time. It is a terrible API for fetching data. But they mentioned in one of these bullet point lists near the end, by the way, you can technically use this for data. No, you should not do it. The point of a summary list isn't to show all of the capabilities, it's to show the intended ones. In the screenshot that I showed here earlier that Abood dropped, and the screenshot I showed earlier that Aaron dropped is very damning. This page should not have existed in this state in the docs. Combine this with the fact that it's named wrong, and now there's a security incident. This is preventable. A thorough audit needs to be done of the Next docs as well as the rest of the Vercel docs to make sure every instance with a bullet point list does not include things that aren't the recommended path. This is really bad and it needs to stop. And this one is small, but I think it's important. I don't know how much Vercel could even do here. We need to market Next better, not a competitor to Laravel. Next needs to be better understood as a set of primitives. People from the security world, for the most part, don't know anything about what Next is meant to be used for. They see Next as an alternative to other full-stack frameworks like Rails and Laravel. The thing that makes Next great is similar to the thing that made React great. When everyone else was providing these all-in-one solutions, React focused on giving you the primitives for good component architecture. When everyone else was focused on full-stack frameworks that support every single edge case and use case and package you can imagine, Next.js made it easier to have your backend and frontend interact. You have annoyed me enough. I don't know how we solve this problem. I'm doing my best on my end, but the idea of Next as a set of primitives that you assemble is really important. But part of that is make sure the primitives are named accordingly. I know this is what I said here, but I really want to emphasize this point. If people are mentally mapping Next to Laravel, then they're mapping the terms between the two as well. If middleware means one thing in Laravel and it means something else in Next, no one's going to get that. Since Next is so different, it should also use different terms. And I am so tired of dealing with this. And once again, I hope you guys understand, I have no financial obligation or tie to Vercel. I have more investment and financial tie to most of their competition than I do to them at this point. I have biases because I'm friends with people who work there and I'm using their product for stuff. But I hope the fact that I tore them to shreds here shows that I'm not just trying to protect them from something. They made a shitload of preventable mistakes here, and they need to fundamentally change the way they communicate about a handful of things in order to prevent this going forward. This almost feels like the inevitable conclusion to things I've been bitching about to them both publicly and privately for 4+ years now. They're not scared of inventing new names for rendering techniques. Why are we scared of inventing a new name for something that isn't middleware? And I knew this one was going to happen too. When everybody was complaining about middleware not running on Node, I knew this was a problem. I really hope the severity of this incident shows them that my bitching about the name problem isn't me just bitching because it's hard to teach people. It's me concerned about these misunderstandings and the ways that they cause problems. And all of that said, as I've diagrammed now multiple times and shown you the examples of, it is genuinely hard for me to fathom a production app that was genuinely insecure as a result of this vulnerability, which means that the CVE rank doesn't feel like a good fit, and the outrage everyone had online doesn't either. More apps were broken and made insecure through Cloudflare's attempt to patch this than were insecure because of it in the first place. And if anyone has an app that actually was made insecure as a result of this, and they're down to share the source code with me, I'll give you a free audit. I'm genuinely curious because it is so hard for me to comprehend what an app vulnerable to this looks like. And my honest guess is that app is vulnerable to a lot of other sidechain attack style things as well. Because if I can get through your middleware at all, and that's the only place your auth checks are happening, there's a very good chance you're exposing that data incorrectly somewhere else. So to summarize, point 1, get your shit together, Vercel. Point 2, I don't think this actually affected any apps. Point 3, everyone being really angry isn't even a Next.js user and should probably be ignored going forward. That's my summary. Vercel fucked up. I don't think anyone's affected. And a lot of people showed their true colors in this one that make them very distrustworthy. And that's it. Vercel has a lot of shit to fix in how they communicate stuff. I don't think anyone's actually affected, and I'm very curious if you are. And everyone who's been outraged publicly about this has outed themselves as someone who shouldn't be listened to in discussions about this, because most of them are clearly very biased and or unaware of what this actually was. I am amazed at how many people outed themselves as untrustworthy sources throughout this. It is quite frustrating, but it is what it is. Credit where it's due, a handful of people, when I reached out, recognized that their understanding was entirely wrong and took down their bad posts and updated them accordingly. But for every one person who did, 5 didn't. And I have seen so many viral posts that fundamentally don't understand what happened here. Let me look at Colin's thread quick, and then we'll wrap up. This is Colin's take on this, by the way. Where to squeeze this? Find somewhere earlier in the video to squeeze it if you need help finding it. Ben, or FaZe, just ask Ben. Probably when I first talked about the static side. This is Colin's take on it. If you're not familiar, he's the CEO of Clerk. We don't fully agree, but I want to try and bridge the gap a little bit here. Colin calls out that Colin tells us that the sites that are most likely to be impacted by this are ones that are guarding static content via middleware. The reason you'd want to do this is you have something like a secret blog that is being generated at build time. You don't want that to be exposed. You would use your middleware layer to prevent it. I don't like the idea of a build step generating assets that are meant to be guarded via auth. There are too many different ways a CDN will deploy those assets for me to ever trust that. So personally, I would never have a build step that generates an HTML page that is now a static asset that is meant to be cached if I am not if I expect that data to be private. The idea of static, cache, and private are contradictory in my head. And I don't like the idea of trusting really anything to take static content and lock it down like that. If you're already checking auth anyways, just generate the content dynamically, or add a really light cache wrapper with unstable cache or the new Next dynamic stuff. Use cache is actually a pretty cool primitive. I don't like the idea of static generation generating private data. That said, there is one part I do agree with here, which is that you should expect the middleware to always run. That's the point of it. The fact that that expectation broke down is a fundamental failure in the design and software. The fact that this promise and expectation broke down is a fundamental failure on the Next team. I understand. That is fair. But I also don't think it should be used this way. And the reason this happened is a gap in the understanding of the Next team and how this thing should be used, the Next DevRels and education side and how it should be used, in the public and what the word middleware means. Those 3 things not being aligned is what resulted in the outrage here, and also resulted in the problem, because the use cases for middleware, the expectations of middleware, and the implementation of middleware were not properly aligned. Also from Colin, it's relatively rare to build a site that offers gated static content. And we have additional protections for dynamic apps that access authentication data after middleware. This is a thing Colin and I have argued on a bunch. As I mentioned before, by default, Clerk would block any API access that wasn't authed through Clerk. So if I was to have a Stripe function, so if I have an endpoint like /API/Stripe that's being hit by Stripe's webhooks, it breaks if you set up Clerk the way they did by default. The majority of our tickets for upload thing for over a year were Clerk because their defaults were shit. And it took me over a year of pestering Colin and the Clerk team for them to finally admit that I was right. I had to fight for so long, and it seems like they're still pushing the other way. I still love Clerk. They're still my default auth solution for almost everything I build. But this is a fundamental disagreement I have with them about the role of middleware in Next. It's also worth noting that they initially came out saying that they were unaffected, and then it turns out they were, with a different additional header you had to add. Thankfully, they addressed it really quickly and handled it on their server side, if I recall. Yeah. They said that the developers using Clerk are not impacted, then followed up with, this tweet is not accurate for all developers using Clerk, more info. Here's their post. You call any of the following methods in routes protected by middleware, your page or endpoint is safe. Yes, if you call any auth function anywhere in your logic, you're fine. And that's the thing I really want to make sure we understand before we wrap this all up. As long as auth is checked anywhere, here onwards, you're good. If the only place auth is even looked at is in this middleware function, I don't know what the hell you're authenticating. But if you check it anywhere else in your app, you're fine. Cool. Back to the wrap up. FaZe, I'm sorry for the chop job you're going to have to do on this one. Trust you to figure it out. Yeah. That's all I have to say on this one. Once again, huge thanks to everybody who stopped by to help out throughout this. Appreciate each and every one of you guys. I've been talking to everybody from security researchers to the Vercel Next team to actual people deploying these things in the public. Yeah. Oh, and great. The Forbidden helper is available in layouts. Vercel. What? Holy shit, $100 drop from Nick Gordon. Thank you so much for the support, man. I really appreciate it. Yeah, my email is in the YouTube stuff. You can check it on that side. I don't want to say it because some people will all find it, but if you go to YouTube about, you can find my email for the YouTube stuff there. Email me, reach out. We can figure out something to help you out. Shit, you got a $50 and $100 drop. Yeah, absolutely. We'll figure out some way to help you. No, I don't know what I just hit there. I'm sorry. No, undo. Don't hide. Don't hide. What the fuck, YouTube? I hate YouTube so much. I am so sorry. Blame YouTube. That's such an atrocious UI. I am so sorry. Oh yeah. This is old. I don't know if I think I talked about that in my auth video a while back. And one last piece. If you want to better understand how to do auth right, I have 2 videos. This one's much more recent where I go through all the different auth providers that exist and the differences between them and how to set them up properly. Good thing to watch if you want to better understand how to authenticate your apps safely. I think that's all I have on this one. Let me know what you guys think. Keep your apps safe. I think that's all I have on this one. Keep your apps safe. Until next time, peace, nerds. Cool. I don't think Midjourney will ever go a different route because they really like to be independent. And yes, I still hope to go live tomorrow. I covered all my key points. I did a good job. Let's finish up the OpenAI one. Yes, you did miss this. Covered that a while back. Let me thank all the subs I missed while I was filming. And we'll get back to finishing up the OpenAI generation one. Nama, no. What? You're not trolling, right? What? Geez, congratulations, man. God. Fuck. Fuck. We have actual somebody who understands how the browser works at OpenAI is very dangerous for us. Congrats. Well deserved. Happy you can continue working on StyleX, but God. Yeah. Fuck. Noted. He's like one of the very few people I know that understands browser perf stuff better than I do. Fuck. I was legitimately planning on writing like a short list of people OpenAI could hire to make my life harder, and he would have been on that list if I did it. And it's not a very long list. You're working on ChatGPT perf for the website? God fucking damn it. Here's the thing, Cooper. I can show the code on the stream because Naman's one of the few people who can write better code. If this was like, no offense, an active community member like a Gabriel, he could make real differences and my code would be beneficial. But like the hierarchy is like Gabriel's right below me and can learn a lot from me. I'm the next tier, and then Naman is above. It is what it is. We'll have to keep winning on other ways. It is absolutely a compliment, Gabriel. You use me well as a resource, and I use Naman well as a resource. I know where I am at. I understand that I'm within the better people for this. Like I've legitimately thought about like who understands render performance in the browser well enough to make a high like throughput, quick updating live chat experience good. As one of the people who helped build Twitch chat, I'm one of very, very few. Anyways, thank you all for the banger alerts, by the way. I saw the spam of those when I was talking about Vercel screw-ups. I appreciate it. Let me thank the subs that I missed while I was filming. We got Whoops Wait What. It's going to put your entire code base because of Google's context window. Understandable. We got Erebus, the X8 here with the 9 months of support. Soso9352. Function goes past the bottom of the whiteboard. Good catch. I'll take a look in a sec. Locked and coded with the GG 32 months. God damn. IMR Lopez here with the Prime. Then McKay here with the 13 months straight, 16 total. MJC hitting the 2-year mark. And Nitvik here with the Prime. Thank you all for the support. I'm very excited to see more auth providers adding Stripe stuff because it's so annoying to implement and it's the right layer to do it, almost certainly. Very excited about that. Oh, you reported the cancellation auth flow thing, right? Yeah, I haven't had a chance to yet. We'll get that fixed soon. It's a good call out. Yeah. I have not been able to code like at all for a minute now because I've been so fucking busy and there's so much crazy personal life stuff going on. I was supposed to go to an event today. Also, I have an email I need to reply to like ASAP. So let's gun out these last videos. Let me reply to that. Get Ben in here. Cool. Ben, make sure that we close that by end of day. Anyways. All planned stuff. Yeah, I hate this example. Fits in with my things I hate. Thank you, Team D-Man, for the sub as well, by the way. Appreciate that a ton. Let's go back to finishing up the video on the image gen ChatGPT stuff. God, the site needs the performance help badly. Goddamn. Go back to Sora. My media. Explore. Image. What do you got for me here? You have my attention. Throw this in the research channel. It might be for tomorrow. Let me marker this. End of OpenAI. Or not end of. Rest of OpenAI vid. Cool. Okay. I hadn't checked out the Sora, or Phase cut this to where we had cut off before. I haven't checked out the Sora side, and I really want to. Let's give this a quick gen. I screwed up the first time and did a video. While that image is generating, we can check out the video it made of a JavaScript coder. It's funny. Every time I've asked it to generate a coder video, it has like the exact same aesthetic to it, I've noticed. Very interesting. Still taking his time with that generation. We'll see how it does. Does anybody have more context on what like the Sora implementation of this is supposed to be? Is it just that the image gen on Sora now uses 4.0? Or is there anything else to it? Yep. Sora now does images through the GPT 4.0 implementation, which isn't diffusion based, which is very interesting. It's also very slow. This one's good. The chalkboard with like reasonable writing that's code that actually is valid. Kind of. You can't just do function without it having a name or something, but yeah, I can take this and create a video from the image. Can I change the aspect ratio? That's annoying. Programmer solving a hard problem with JavaScript. After solving the problem, they smile and look to the camera. It's like an interesting small UX thing, but I did notice this when I was playing with the chat earlier. It doesn't generate multiple, which for image gen stuff can be quite annoying because it's very nice when you use something like Midjourney. It defaults to generating 4 of the thing. So when I asked it to generate a golden retriever, it generated these 4 as a group. And then when I had one I liked, I told it to upscale. And now I have this super high res version, which I forgot to even check the resolution of for comparison. It's an 8 meg file, and the resolution is 2048 by 2048, which is double the resolution that I could get out of ChatGPT. That said, you could throw the ChatGPT image into other software to do the upscaling. That's hilarious. The left one I liked more until the laptop turned and became 2 laptops. The right one has camera shaking comparable to only the Anthropic like videos they film where they're just shaking the camera around the whole time. Yeah, both of these are almost good and then quickly get bad. It's real until it's not. And as you look more, especially like at the hands, like watch this hand there. His arm just folds into his hand as it switches scenes. Video gen is still a much harder problem because you can't just diffuse a given frame. You have to generate frame to frame, which is not fun, but it's improving. It's getting there. What is on the laptop? Interesting. It hallucinated the Mac UI pretty well there. Arduino IDE. Interesting. You guys immediately called it. Yeah. Good eyes. You guys know your shit too well. Yeah, I see it. So much for JavaScript. Is there anything else important in this release worth covering? Yeah. Okay, so we'll cut all of what I did up until here to now. I almost forgot to check. They added support for the new 4.0 image gen stuff in Sora, which is fascinating because it allows you to get a much better starting point when you generate an image. Sora's for video, but you can also generate images with it. So you can use that to generate a starting point. It'll generate multiple at once, which is nice. I've missed this from Midjourney because Midjourney will generate 4 at a time. ChatGPT only generates 1 at a time. Sora, despite using the same model as ChatGPT, will generate 2 images at a time. And then when they are generated, you can refine them, ask for changes, remix it, edit the prompt. Most importantly, once you have a good starting point, you can click the Create Video button and generate a video out of the image. So I generated this one, and I then went and generated this video with it, which is good until the laptops start to split and you notice the hands. And the other one shakes its camera more than Anthropic does during a marketing post. But you get the idea. It's a much better starting point because the non-diffusion model seems really good at this. And all of this is a huge leap forward in the tech for generating stuff, especially with text. The real revolution here is the text generation isn't just passable, it's pretty good now. And that has not been the case with any of these tools up until now. On the rare times where I would generate an AI image to use for something, if it needed text, I would add the text in post by hand myself. Now I might not have to, which makes the use cases for these tools much wider, and it means that you don't need to be a lunatic like me that's a Photoshop pro in order to get the most benefit out of them. This is a very exciting shift for the generative market for generating media, but it's also a really fundamentally but it's also a fascinating technical change too, because they're not using diffusion models for this work. Very excited to see where this goes and what people can do with it. And also kind of scared to see the images people are going to generate and the misleading Facebook AI slop that's going to infect my parents' brains. Let me know what you guys think, though. Am I overreacting, or is the potential here nuts? Let me know in the comments. And until next time, peace, nerds. Cool. I have had multiple long conversations with my family about AI slop stuff because of there's enough of my voice that if they get a phone call, even from my number that sounds like me, I told them they have to call me to confirm. Cool. This one, I really hope we can get up by early tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be an insane day for videos. I think I have to move this back a day now. Which means I can film this tomorrow then, right? If this got pushed back a day, I can go offline. I'm not even supposed to be live right now, and I've been live for almost 4 hours. Thank you, Team D-Man, for the sub. Thank you, Jay McPhee, for the sub as well. Let's figure out who we're throwing the raid to so I can get the fuck offline. Oh, we got to raid Prime, right? Thank you, guys. See you tomorrow. We got a lot more to talk about. Didn't even finish all the things I meant to go live for. Sasha Gray's the homie. What do you mean? She's great. I taught her Bash. Thank you guys all for hanging out. I will see you all tomorrow. Have fun with Prime. So long, nerds. And goodbye to YouTube as well.